dun, 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 dun. Hello, Mike Baker.
Hello.
Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back on.
My pleasure. So tell me what's up. Are we in trouble? What's going on, man?
No, it's World War III. Haven't you heard?
Is it?
Yeah, no. No, it's not. No, I'm here to burst that bubble, I think. Not that anyone's going to say, okay, I'm writing this down. Mike said no World War III. But it was amazing how fast I'll put that closer there. It was amazing how fast the narrative came out.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we'd barely smoked Soleimani, and suddenly the current president's going to get us into this conflict. And
I was nervous.
Well, I think everybody stepped back because it was such a shock to the system, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time we dealt with Iran in this fashion? I mean, as opposed to like a harshly worded démarche or a note or maybe an extra sanction here or there. But it was such a strange development that I think it did, and the natural reaction was to say, oh my God, here we go. And certainly everybody's exhausted from 19 years out there. So, but
I was shocked that Trump could make that call because they had a bunch of different options. They're like, or we could kill him. He's like, let's kill him. Well, I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that.
Well, you know what? He's been a target before.
Yes.
Soleimani is. I mean, there's. I guess I should first say where I stand on this, which is I'm not mourning his passing. Right? I mean, I think he deserved it. I think it's justice that should have been served up some time ago. He's responsible, not just for, as people have talked about, the hundreds of U.S. servicemen, but thousands and thousands of people. This guy was a completely bloodthirsty douchebag. I mean, there's no way about it. And we're talking about the second most, structure-wise, the second most important person within the Iranian regime, next to the Ayatollah. So, but the idea that somehow we took out a foreign leader, right, or a military general like he was some sort of, Eisenhower, is insane. The guy was a mob boss. He was the head terrorist for a state that is the number one sponsor of terrorism around the world, and so, but he's been on target lists for a long time. You go back to, I think, 2008. There was an operation to take out a guy named Mugnia, who himself was also a bloodthirsty psychopath, and he was running Hezbollah operations. So the Israelis had been tracking him, as had we, and at one point they had an opportunity to take out Mugnia and also Soleimani, and they backed off at the time, essentially because the U.S. wouldn't, get behind the idea that we're going to take out Soleimani. That was, at that point, that was a step too far. So they eventually we got Mugnia, but Soleimani is just. I mean, I don't even know where to start with the amount of blood that he's responsible for. People talk about, again, okay, he authorized operations and activities in Iraq against U.S. soldiers and against Iraqi soldiers and Iraqi civilians. But it goes back to the beginning of that. I mean, you could go back to 2003, and Soleimani was the architect. He dreamt up this idea as the U.S. was going into Iraq that he was going to. I mean, what he did was insane. He basically authorized. I mean, he's in charge, right? So he authorizes the release of a bunch of Sunnis that they've been holding on to. Iran being Shiite, arch rivals being the Sunnis, essentially. And the Saudis are their arch enemy, a Sunni nation. But he released all these Sunni extremists that Iran had been holding on to, essentially ever since we had gone into Afghanistan, right after 9/11. And he released them into Iraq, including a guy named Zarqawi, who became the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq. And within a few months of our getting out to Iraq, these Sunnis, under Soleimani's tutelage, had a series of bombings and started bombing everything from Shiite mosques to UN facilities, a Jordanian embassy, a variety of targets, killing thousands of Shiites. Now, he's a Shiite, right? So this is how bad this guy is. He goes into Iraq with this plan that I'm going to push the Shiite in Iraq to Iran. I'm going to make them come to us for protection, for coverage, essentially. We can ride in there because what does he want? He wants to exert their influence within Iraq. He doesn't want a strong Iraq. He doesn't want the U.S. in there building a strong, stable Iraq. I mean, you go back to the Iran-Iraq War where Soleimani started his military career. And, he's not, there's no way, he's a true believer. There's no way he's ever going to let Iraq become stable again. And he's insane enough that he kills thousands of Shiite, his own people, right, in order to push the Shiite population in Iraq to Iran. I don't know if I may not be being eloquent enough, but
false flag operations. Who's he blaming? These
it's not the Sunnis. It's the Sunnis who are doing
he's
it.
Blaming
Sunni
it on
extremists.
the Sunnis.
Yeah, but he's authorized and he's pushed them into Iraq to do this. And so he was always very unusually capable at walking a fine line between his own Shiite beliefs, population, everything, and at times being able to be sort of a puppet master for Sunni extremists when it suited his cause. And it's fascinating stuff. And whether it was dealing with Hezbollah or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad or whomever, he again, I keep going back to the same thing. He deserved what he got, no doubt in my mind. And I'm just surprised it didn't happen sooner. Maybe not from us, but from others. They just back in October, the Iranians, claimed that they foiled an assassination attempt against Soleimani by Israel and some unnamed Arab agents. So it's not as if we just plucked his name out. He'd spent 2 decades, engaged in death and mayhem.
Now, the take on him dying has not been like the take on Baghdadi. And Baghdadi, one of the most disturbing things that I saw was the Washington Post called him an austere religious scholar. Did you see that?
Yeah.
When that guy died, they called him an austere religious scholar. And people that I talked to that understand who he was and what was going on there were fucking fuming. They were like, what is this? Who the fuck wrote this?
Right.
Like, you're talking about a goddamn terrorist, a real legitimate murderous terrorist, and you're calling him an austere religious scholar.
Right. You're giving him this credibility. So I don't understand that either. I saw that, and I talked to a handful of people who, kind of leaned in that direction. And also, you get the same thing with Soleimani. Now, Soleimani, I can understand. He's wrapped in the cloak of a military uniform, and, people saw him sitting next to the Ayatollah, and okay. But I look at it the same way. This is not assassinating a foreign leader. This is not assassinating a revered scholar. These are taking out terrorists, bloodthirsty terrorists who have a long track record of killing people. And it's not he was not he was not choosy, right? With Soleimani, we're talking about again Iraqis, Yemenis. Syrians, his own people. I mean, they talk about maybe some 1,500 or so protesters, being killed in Iran in the past few months as a result of the protests against the Iranian regime, primarily because of corruption. The fact that they've driven that economy into a toilet at the expense of the Iranian people, lack of rights of any sort, and Soleimani again as the head of the Quds Force. And the number 2 person there, he's responsible. So I don't understand anybody who doesn't just say, yeah, and I think the left had a hard time with it. The hard left, you saw them spinning a little bit saying, okay, we don't say he shouldn't have gotten it. We don't say he didn't deserve it. But, and then they had to try to figure out some way to, because it's all got to be about politics now. So they bring it back to the current president, to Trump.
Well, whenever Trump does anything, even if what he does is fantastic, they can't get behind it. They almost have to go against things that are great. Like, if the economy is great, they've got to find a reason why it's bad that the economy is great. Yeah. And if it's his decisions lead to something positive, they can't accept it. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Well, we've lost our ability to, I think, to look at things just in an objective fashion, in any sense of the word objective. Or certainly we don't have civil conversations anymore, but the idea that we can look at and separate the politics from it. Look, I don't care whether people like Trump or not. I didn't vote for him. I don't necessarily care for the individual, but that doesn't mean I can't like policies.
Right.
And whether you're talking about what's going on with Iran, whether you're talking about the way that we've been dealing with China lately, other issues, I liked President Obama. Didn't like his policies. I don't necessarily like Trump. I like his policies. I don't see any conflict there. Right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, I don't see any conflict there either. I mean, people are complicated, and I just didn't know that Trump could make the call. Like, he could be the guy that goes take him out. Like when I thought that was like there was probably a panel of military leaders and like really important people that understand the ramifications.
Yeah.
Not a fucking game show host.
Yeah, like in America's Got Talent or something.
Yeah.
There's 4 people sitting there hitting a buzzer. You know?
I felt like that it would be like something that they would discuss. Not that Trump would be like, yeah, option 3, fuck them.
Well, but they talk about it, and there is a great deal of conversation that goes on, not necessarily with the president. You know, I have no idea how he processes his information, but there's a great deal of conversation and discussion that goes on in the Pentagon, within the intel community, and National Security Council. You know, what happens once they lay out these options in front of the president? You know, I don't have a clue, but he does have that authority. He's got that ability, and President Obama had that authority. President Obama took out, remember, you know, U.S. citizens, you know, who were, overseas in the Middle East, and they were, you know, there was a hue and cry over sort of the legality of it, but you didn't see a lot of people saying, you know, and in part, okay, I admit, because it wasn't, again, this, you know, Soleimani's wrapped in the cloak of his military uniform. And
well, it's also
different.
People are very concerned about this possibility of us going to war with Iran, and they think that this might have like started that off. Yeah,
I think what changed the calculus here is Iran is, you know, the regime is brutal and awful. They're not crazy. And the one thing they want more than anything else is to retain power. That's it. And I think they looked at the idea of a military conflict, a direct military conflict with the U.S. And this is not to say that their proxies won't, you know, strike out at us someplace around the world at some point. But the regime looked at that and thought, nah, you know what, we're not going to do this. In part because, you know, the killing of Soleimani is important on a much bigger level than just taking out, you know, a terrorist of his stature. It's important for deterrence purposes, and so, you know, I think they looked and felt like the calculus in dealing with the U.S. has shifted now, and they don't understand it. They're not comfortable with it, and also they can't afford it. Look, if we got in a military conflict, that was the idea that, you know, somehow we were going to get in World War III. It would be over in an evening. Literally, it would be over in one night. We have the ability to take out their entire energy infrastructure, their missile bases, their key military facilities. And I don't want to oversimplify this, but after that first night's activity, that's it. They're done. So the idea that somehow there's going to be – now, does that mean that, you know, we should do that? Of course not. Nobody wants a military conflict. But, you know, and again, there would be knock-on repercussions, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully we can sort this thing out through, now that we're doing the military deterrence and they understand that we're serious. We've got the economic pressures. We've got diplomatic pressure, primarily to keep them isolated. I think we're on the right track with Iran. I think we're going to see a different reaction from them.
Well, I was a little bit relieved when they attacked back and just sort of like launched missiles on the outside of bases. Nobody died. I was like, okay, so it seems like this is almost like they're making a signal like they're attacking, but they're not really doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there was an optic to it. I think you're right, absolutely, that they felt like they had to do something.
Yeah.
The Ayatollah's got I don't know whether you call it saving face or not, but, you know, and we had a warning. We had warning ahead of time.
And didn't they print in their paper, didn't they say that they killed a bunch of people?
They did.
In the missile attack?
Yeah, they claimed about 80 or so, I think.
Great. Keep saying it.
Right, exactly. Just whatever it takes. But then, I mean, you know, but look at the reaction that we've had. You know, of course, the Ukrainian commercial passenger jet went down.
Yeah. And that was them, right?
Oh, that was definitely them.
So do you think that they shot it down because they thought it was a U.S. military plane?
Yeah, it was. Look, it's not unprecedented. I mean, we shot down an Iranian passenger jet years and years ago, right? The Russians shot down. They still won't admit to it, but they shot down a passenger jet over Ukraine. Just a handful of years ago, which they still won't admit to. It's human error. And it's human error in a conflict zone, in a situation where there's a lot of moving parts, and it's never going to be a zero-risk game. So if the Iranians had done this, as tragic as it is, and come out and said, "Oh my God, we did this," okay, well, it would have been horrific, but they did this to themselves. Because they just couldn't bring themselves to be truthful. They've got a long track record of not. And so they engaged in this and shot it down. When you find missile debris in a field where you're doing an investigation of a plane crash, that's a pretty good indication. And then there's the video on top of that.
Oh, there is a video of the missile hitting the plane?
Yeah, 2 missiles.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, 30 seconds apart, roughly 30 seconds apart. So
it took 2 missiles to bring down a plane?
Yeah, it hit the first one. The first one hit, and then about 30 seconds later, not quite 30 seconds later, a second missile hits. There's another fireball, and the plane stays up in the air for a period of time, just because it's not devastated, but it was some 20 miles from the airport. It had actually kind of made as if it was turning back to the airport, probably right after that first missile hit. But here's the thing. That's a tragic disaster right there, right? But the idea that somehow nobody's actually saying they did it on purpose. They didn't do it on purpose. They did it. It was an accident. They mistook it for either an incoming missile or a hostile aircraft, coming in for a bombing run after they launched their ballistic missile strike. So nobody's saying it was done on purpose, but it's indicative of the Revolutionary Guard force and the regime itself, that they spent several days denying it and saying it was mechanical failure and pressuring the Ukrainians to come out and say it was mechanical failure, which they then reversed course on that once it became obvious. So it's a tragic situation. But now the protests out in the streets of Iran, which are a continuation of the past several months, right, which were targeted at a corrupt regime, have picked up strength in light of that, because the people are just we're tired of this.
Yeah.
And who knows where it's going to go? I suspect, unfortunately, I'm fairly cynical about all this. We've been hoping the Iranian population would kind of rise up for decades, and it doesn't happen because it's a pretty brutal regime. We don't understand that. We don't understand how difficult they are, right, and how serious-minded they are about holding on to power. So every now and then we think, okay, here come the protests. It's going to topple the regime, and it doesn't happen. So maybe it's different this time. I don't think so.
Now, were you concerned at all? And this is one of the things when you say that we could go in there and level them in a day. The real issue is their allies, right? The real issue is China and Russia.
Yeah, but they're not going to do anything. China and Russia aren't going to do anything. It's not in their best interest. And they if they're consistent about one thing, both those countries, it's that they act in their own best interest. And they would look at that and go, yeah, I'm sorry. Look, so what are we dealing with in that immediate area? Iran's closest ally is Syria, right? Soleimani spent, billions of, Iranian dollars or money that they couldn't afford to, and that should have been spent on its population, arming, training, equipping, and dealing with the Syrian war and keeping his pal Assad in power. So Iran and Assad and Syria are tied together, but is Syria in a position to somehow rise up and engage? This is not going to be. This wouldn't have been a conflict as we imagine it, right? It wouldn't be a conflict of occupying space and ground and all the rest of it. Nobody wants it. Nobody needs it. It's not good for anybody. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in the scheme of things, we would have overwhelming superiority. Yeah, and yeah, I can't imagine a scenario where Russia, would come in, and in fact, we would. Probably, as anybody would, we would say, okay, look, the Russian military is in Syria. We're going to liaise with you. We're going to advise you. Shit's coming down, and because the last thing we want to do is drag them into it by hitting some of their facilities or personnel or whatever. So there would be that level of coordination, which there always is, no matter who the parties are. There's always some element of coordination. But anyway, yeah, I don't see that happening. I think we've averted that. I hope we've averted sort of further military, conflict. I think the Iranian regime understands that it's a new day, perhaps, that they'll come to the table eventually. That's what this whole maximum pressure campaign's about, is to, again, create sufficient economic pressure, ensure that they understand the idea of deterrence, which I think they do after this strike on Soleimani. And that goes back a ways. This wasn't just like something that just they thought of after an American contractor was killed. The Iranian regime had been ratcheting up their aggressiveness and their attacks and their various operations out in that region for quite a while, and we had been talking to them about it or getting the signal to them that you've got to stop this. And back in December, they were told, look, if you continue this path, we are going to take serious action. And we did.
How difficult is it to get intelligence on what they're up to and what they're planning, what they're responsible for? Like when you're here in America, I mean, how do we do it? Like, who's over there? Like, how do they do that? How do they find out exactly what these guys are up to?
Well, a lot of it's old school human intelligence, right? So through sources. And a lot of that sourcing comes from our allies. So whether it's the Israelis or the Jordanians or the Saudis or whomever, right?
So they know someone who's on the inside, or like, how does it work?
They've got a source. They've got some recruited asset. You know, Iran's always been a tough target for us, just like North Korea is a tough target. And so we rely heavily on our liaison partners. And but oftentimes, no matter how good your signals intelligence is, right? No matter how good you are at gathering SIGINT or photo interpretation of overhead imagery, it's still, to this day, no matter how good technology gets, you can't beat having an asset, having a human who's sitting in a meeting somewhere, and then for whatever their motivation is, whatever their reason for doing it, they're cooperating with you or our liaison partners, and they're saying, well, here's what happened, or here's how that person looked, right? I mean, maybe you get signals intelligence because you're picking up communications, and then what do you got? You got something on a piece of paper, and you're reading a transcript of a meeting. But if you've got somebody who's in that meeting and who can tell you what people looked like, or what the actual atmosphere was, or the mood, or the way that, I mean, that's invaluable, right? And so we rely a great deal on that. But you hoover up everything you can from all the various different types of intelligence capabilities. But it's a tough target. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's why this whole nuclear weapons program with Iran has always been so difficult, right? I mean, and you talk to people and they go, well, they've got about a 12-month breakout time before they'd have a nuclear weapon. And then other people say, well, I think they got about a 3-month breakout time. Well, when you're talking about how long it's going to take them to have a nuclear weapon, you'd like to get those parameters a little closer together, right, so that you're not having a complete guess. But it's tough. And, we spend a lot of time working on that. But I would say that we have tremendous allies in that region. And I know that it's fashionable nowadays to say, well, the Trump administration, we've been, pushing away our allies and they don't want to work with us. And you know what? They do. And in part because, again, it's the same old story. It's in their best interest, right? So,
is there any benefit to having someone like Trump who's very difficult to read? Because he's the kind of guy, like when Baghdadi was killed, he said he died like a dog. Like he says crazy shit, and he talks about, like, with Iran that they might respond back with disproportionate results, or with a disproportionate response in comparison to the initial attack.
Yeah,
if
or
Iran
the cultural sites. The
52 cultural sites. But that was so crazy, like to represent the 52 people that were kidnapped in the fucking Carter administration.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need to go with the symbolism, fellas. We could just pick some targets, but let's not pick the cultural sites.
Yeah, that seems ridiculous. Why would you do that? Those are historic.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's where I say, look, I understand why people, go, oh my God, and but at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't policies that are in place. So I always put that out there. I always say, yeah, I get it. That's ridiculous, right? And it's a self-inflicted wound. And you could argue that that most of the problems they deal with out of this White House are self-inflicted wounds because there's a lack of discipline. And so it'd be nice if the president was more buttoned up. Of course, that's not going to be the way it works. He I think, what do I know? But he firmly believes, I think, that this is why he got elected.
I think it is why he got elected.
Really?
Yeah, I think a lot of why he got elected is because he's wild. And people like it. They like it. They're like something different. They're tired of these people that sound like politicians. You hear, pick a person, Elizabeth Warren, you hear them talk, and you feel the bullshit coming out of their mouth while they're talking. You know that they're playing a role. You know that with Trump, he might be arrogant, he might be crazy, he might be ridiculous, but that's him. That's that guy. I bet if you're around him all day long, he's like that. I mean, that's the thing that one of the things that people like about him. He's like that all the time. That's who he is.
Yeah.
Like, he's not he doesn't need to bullshit. He's Donald Trump. He's a fucking multi-billionaire who is now the president of the United States. So it's like he doesn't feel the need to put on an act for anybody. So when he comes out and says he died like a dog, like that's how he would talk.
Yeah. No, I think the consistency. I think you're right. There's an element of look. I am tired of the bullshit. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I guess what I think then is, I mean, what are the chances that you get to 20? Well, we're in 2020. Look at that. But we get down to November to the election, and people are just exhausted by it. Right. So they wanted something different. Now they've had it. Are they going to get to this point in November and get ready to vote and think, I can't take another 4 years of it, even though it's entertaining. I'm exhausted.
People don't like change. They get scared of change. And if things are going well economically, and if it turns out that this thing with Iran doesn't turn into anything disastrous by the time November rolls around, I think he's going to win in a landslide. I don't see, unless Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard get together, and then everybody goes, you know what, that would work. Like this is a real combination of people that I could get behind. Unless it's something like that where there's like some overwhelming candidate, but I don't see that. And they seem to be pushing for Elizabeth Warren. I don't see that.
Yeah.
She was a Republican most of her career, and she became a Democrat like when she was in her late 40s.
I find maybe it's just me, but I don't see a consistent policy message there. I don't see I don't see that happening for her this go around. Maybe it'll change. Maybe you need, I don't know. But
the problem is, I feel like these people just want to be president. I feel like it's a self-aggrandizement thing. They just want to be president.
I think you could argue that about anybody in politics. So you could say that. I mean, you've met that person, right, who's in politics now, who started out by being head of the Republican or Democratic club in high school. Mm-hmm. Right, that's all they want to do. Then they're a state senator, and then they say, "Oh, am I going to run for Congress?" And you think, "What the fuck?" I mean, how? It's got to be something. The wiring's off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's the problem, right? Anybody that wants to be president, you wouldn't want to be president.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at who they've got on the other side, right? I mean, I thought for a while that maybe the Republicans are going to primary Trump, right? And then I realized that's a crazy ass idea. No one's ever going to do that. No one's going to get in there and
go against
stir
him?
it up with him for a primary.
Who?
Yeah,
Who?
Who? Yeah.
Who?
So
there's no one that stands out. Like you would need someone that already stands out. I mean, here we are in January. You would need someone that already stands out. We're talking about doing something 10 months from now. You need someone that's already in the public eye. You can't just jump to the head of the line like that. No, especially from the Republican side.
If say he wins again in 2020, got 4 years, I tell you one person I would love to see jump in. I don't think she'd ever do it, but would be Condoleezza Rice, and just super smart, good person. Terrific. I don't know, but again, I don't think that's gonna. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't know that we've.
Do you think she would run for president?
I mean, I would like to think so. I doubt it. She hasn't shown any interest in it. I think she's enjoying private life too much.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, all the shit
probably
she
too
went
smart
through
to run
with
for.
the Iraq war and everything. She's probably like, take that and stick it up your ass. I'm going to hang out in my ranch or whatever the fuck she's got. Don't they all have ranches? I always figure they all go to Wyoming.
Anybody who comes out of the Republican administration has got to have a ranch.
You get a ranch somewhere and you lay low.
Oh, yeah.
Like Cheney, he's got a ranch.
He definitely got a ranch.
That's
a ranch guy.
Bush has got a ranch.
I think he'd be better aim, but he's got a ranch.
Better aim?
Man.
Well, I think he was a little drunk at the time. That was one of my favorite times. He shot his friend in the face and his friend apologized.
Yeah.
That's how gangster Dick Cheney is.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got my face in the way, sir. I shouldn't have done that.
Was like, I'm sorry, I look like a quail, sir.
Yeah. I got my oldest boy for Christmas, 12 years old, and great kid, Scooter. I got him a airsoft, a Glock replica, and I didn't know much about airsoft, right? I mean, who does? I mean, I've got a walk-in safe full of weapons, but none of them are airsoft weapons. I don't, but he really wanted one. His buddies have them, and they go out shooting, and they do the old school thing, right? They put on a couple of layers of clothes and some eye protection, and they go shoot each other. So how could I say no? So we go to the store, to this combat supply shop that specializes in airsoft, and I was really impressed. I mean, the machining on these things is fantastic, right? First of all, and I was expecting some. The old school pellet guns and BB guns, the Crossmans, things like that, that are plastic for the most part and everything. But this is a solid piece of work. And anyway, so got on this thing. It's turned out, I don't know where I was going with the shooting and the shot. He's actually, I suspect he's a better shot than Cheney, as it turns out. And he's got his hunting certificate, and he's been through that education program, and he's in the Scouts, and so we go out shooting every now and then. But it took him almost no time at all, right, in terms of practice to develop. I'm I'm boasting about my 12-year-old's target shooting ability. I realize that's not why most viewers tune in.
Sometimes they want to know.
Yeah, maybe so. Anyway, so that's Jay. But yeah, I think you're right. Nobody's going to primary this president, and I think we're left with this field of potential candidates on the Dem side. And I tend to agree. I think it's going to be a landslide unless there's some. If the market tanks for whatever reason because there's some international crisis somewhere and it sends things down through the floor, maybe. But if the economy stays the way it is, and the Dems seem to wander into their primary season as unorganized as they seem to be, I could see him winning again big.
Well, I think people want to look at him as being all bad. But if what he's done and the moves that he's made are great for the economy, and things appear to be very good, right?
Yeah, no, I think again you can't. But the problem is they can't separate that.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you can't find a progressive who's going to stop and go, well, the economy is good. Or if they say it always followed by a but. It's not good for everybody. Well, it's never good for everybody.
It's true too. So, it isn't.
No.
Yeah, I mean they want the economy to be the way it is, but they want Bernie Sanders' economic policies. And it's interesting because I think that someone who supports big business the way Trump does, he encourages people to move business forward. I mean, it encourages the market, encourages people to spend money. It encourages people to take risks. If the more he makes it easier for these big businesses, also the more people get outraged, but then the economy picks up. It's like, boy, I don't know what the correct way to do this is, but even though I'm not a Trump fan, there are definite benefits to the way he has been running the country.
Yeah, well, when you talk about some of the basic metrics, you look at the unemployment rate, right? I mean, and I just finished a conversation the other day. I mean, Idaho, not to bring in Idaho, but Idaho's got the second strongest state economy in the nation, right? The unemployment rate is almost negligible. It's crazy how strong it is at this point.
Because there's solid people up there.
Solid people. We all have ranches. So that's the other thing.
You all know how to fly fish.
Exactly. Oh,
look, there's something to that, though.
Yeah.
The solid people.
Yeah.
I mean, Idaho is there's real people up there. You go up there, it's fucking cold as shit. There's wolves and bears. Those are real goddamn people.
You got to come back. Are you coming back up?
I would definitely come back up. I would definitely come back up. I'll schedule something.
Yeah, that would be great. But I think the point with the economy is that it does. And again, I get it. Not everybody's in the stock market. Of course, not everybody's in the stock market. But as it improves, or tax cuts, that whole it was only for the rich. You can't tell me that people haven't been benefiting from it. And yes, there's going to be segments that it takes longer, or you got to work harder, or whatever it is to feel that improvement. But it's there. And again, I don't see unless there's something that sends it heading south. And I think the Democrats are in a difficult position. They can't talk it down. Michael Bloomberg's trying. He's not a Democrat, though. I don't know what he is. But he's not.
What is he?
Yeah, he was
a
Republican.
Billionaire Democrats?
Tom Steyer.
Yeah?
Yeah. I keep wanting to say Steyer. I don't know why I keep saying Steyer. Because it makes me sound clever. But Tom Steyer, yeah. But I think that Bloomberg is trying to say, look, this, the economy needs to be adjusted, needs to be fixed. I don't think anybody buys it, right? Because there's no supporting data for that, right? And so they have a hard time battling against the economy, which is why I think they try to avoid it for the most part. I mean, that debate last night, did you watch that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't watch them. They pushed Tulsi Gabbard out. I stopped watching them. Like, you guys are out of your fucking mind. She's the most interesting candidate out there.
Yeah, next to Marianne Williamson.
Oh, well, that bitch is crazy. Sorry for using that word.
Crazy?
No, bitch.
No, okay.
I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
I say it, it's a term of endearment. But isn't she like a crystal healer or some shit?
Yeah.
She was trying to come on the podcast, too. I was like, she's doing a tour.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a boat with a lot of holes in it, and it ain't gonna make it across the harbor.
It's like talking to one of your aunts, right? One of your crazy aunts.
Yeah, it's in the crystals.
Comes over for the holidays, And you say, "What are you doing?" Well, I made you a dream catcher, and I'm thinking, "Okay, thank you." So,
a dream catcher. I think Bernie Sanders has some interesting thoughts, and talking to him in person, in real life, I like him a lot. Mm-hmm. He's not like what he comes off in those goddamn debates, because those debates are ridiculous. You get 5 people in front of the camera. You ask them a question, they have 30 seconds to answer it. Everybody else is jumping in, yelling things out. They're all trying to get a sound bite.
That's all it is. It's not. It's not actually a debate. I mean, remember, debate club. I mean, it was, and it's not. It's not that. It's exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's sound bites. A series of sound bites. They're all looking to have a moment.
Yeah.
They don't want to screw up, so they want to have a kind of a safe moment.
Right.
And they go through. I agree with you. I like Bernie because he's been consistent. You can go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
And he's saying the same shit that he's saying now.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to that. Now I don't buy his arguments. I don't but I like the guy, and I like the fact that he's consistent and he means what he says. And so I can separate out liking him from liking his policies.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem there, but I don't think they're going to let Bernie. There was a moment, I'll tell you about last night on this debate thing, where I think it was the CNN moderator. She asked Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren had come out the other day and said that she had a private conversation with Bernie. And during the conversation, Bernie said, a woman's never going to win. That's my Bernie. Yeah. A woman's never going to win or can't win being president. He was more eloquent than that, but the voice sounded just like it. And so he's denied it. So the moderator last night during this debate asked Bernie Sanders, let me just be clear, she said, are you saying that you've never said this to Elizabeth Warren? And Bernie said, absolutely not. Very next words out of the moderator's mouth was she turned to Elizabeth Warren and said, so, Senator Warren, when Bernie said to you that when Bernie said to you that a woman couldn't be president, how did you feel?
Jesus Christ.
That was it. And so I think that they're not even trying now to hide the fact that they want to marginalize Sanders.
Yeah.
Right? So
why did they want to marginalize him?
Because I think they feel he can't. There's no way he can win.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think on a national level, I think
the Dems. Elizabeth Warren can win after lying about being Native American for her whole life.
Yeah.
That's a fucking big one to me.
Oh, by the way, I was one of my boys was home sick the other day from school. The middle boy, Sluggo, and so we were sitting on the sofa. And I said, well, you're not feeling. You want to watch a movie? Now, God bless him. He's 10 years old. He considers himself a baller. All he wants to do is play basketball. That's all he wants to do with his life. He knows he's going to get recruited by Duke. He knows he's going to end up in the NBA. But we're sitting there, and it was really kind of sweet because he's got all this hard side to him, and I'm just playing ball. And then he says, well, yeah, let's watch a Disney movie. So we kind of dialed up Disney Plus because we're sheep, and we bought the Disney Plus thing. And Peter Pan. And the original Peter Pan, right? The original Disney Peter Pan. So we turned it on. And I'd forgotten what that movie was like in terms of its treatment of Native Americans.
Oh, it's horrible.
Oh, my God. So we're watching it, and we get to that part where, they're singing that song, and the boys, the Lost Boys are tied up with Wendy and Michael and all that, and the chief comes in, and he wants to find Tiger Lily, the princess, because, Hook is... The viewers are like, what the hell's going on here? So anyway, I'm sitting there, and even Sluggo looks at me, and he goes, wow, this is kind of racist. Really?
But a 10-year-old says that?
Yeah, a 10-year-old says it. I thought, well, okay.
Everything was racist back
Everything
then.
was racist. Well, that's what we had. We had a conversation. I said, yeah, you know what? Pretty much what I told him. But anyway.
Well, particularly about Native Americans. I mean, they were able to get away with it. Nobody protested it. I'm reading this book now, or I'm listening to it on tape, called Black Elk Speaks. It's about this Oglala Sioux medicine man who was, while he was still alive in the 1930s, they wrote this book. He told the story of Custer, and he was there. He was a young boy when Custer was killed, and he told the story of life on the plains and Crazy Horse, and it's fucking fascinating.
When was it written?
It was written in 1930s.
Okay, it's called what? Black Elk Speaks?
Black Elk Speaks. Okay. Yeah, I've listened to on tape. This is like the fourth or fifth one that I've listened to on Native Americans over the last couple of months, but this is the best one. This is the best one because not that the other ones weren't great. They were great, but what's interesting about this is the actual words of a man who lived that life. It's not just a historical a book about the time and describes the events of the time. This is a guy describing what he saw, and he was talking particularly about war, about the way it was when they killed Custer, and he was there when they killed Custer, and just the battles between the American soldiers and the Native Americans. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that it happened just a short time ago. And it's also crazy to think that if no one came to America, if the world just stayed in Europe and Asia and the way it had been before Columbus and before the Pilgrims and all that shit, these people would probably still be living like that because that's not that long ago.
Well, you think about it. It's what was it? It was a warring tribal culture.
Yeah.
Where else? I mean, where else do we have this? I'm probably going to make a botch at this point, but warring tribal cultures in the Middle East, right? I mean, it's a difficult environment, right, in which to say, okay, we're going to have some sort of federal system. We're going to come together. We're going to work for the greater good, and everything. But I mean, I think I will say this. The most depressing scenes I've ever seen have been on Native American Indian reservations in this country. And
I've never been.
Oh, my God.
I've never been other than casinos.
It's just you go and I'd spent most of my adult life overseas, right, in some pretty grim places. And I remember the first time I was on a reservation here in the U.S. And I thought, how can this possibly be here? And I know that's a naive thought, and people think, well, how could you not know that it was here? But it's, A, it's not a good history, but B, it's not a good follow-up either. I mean, right? We just, to this day, we don't do a very good job at all. And the reservation systems, not all of them, of course. It's like not every urban center is, crime rate. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I'm just saying, in general, some of the most difficult places I've ever seen have been right here in our borders, right, on Indian reservations. And good God. Yeah,
I want to get someone someone to come in here who's a Native American, who's a historian, who really understands the history of their tribe. Someone who can come in here and talk to me about it, because I just had a sort of a peripheral understanding of it up until about 5 or 6 months ago. I really, I had seen movies and I had read books and I'd kind of understood, but I didn't really get into it until I started reading these books. And it's just incredible to think that there was millions and millions of tribes, or millions and millions of members of different tribes living in this country, like basically like Stone Age people, just 150 years ago.
And oftentimes, in constant conflict with each other.
Yes.
Right?
That's a big thing that I didn't really understand.
Yeah.
The horrific things they did to each other, kidnapped each other, tortured each other.
Right. Then we came along and they're like, what the fuck? Come on, lighten up. I mean, jeez. Yeah. We brought them a whole new level.
Well, as soon as we figured out repeating guns, as soon as they figured out revolvers with more than one bullet, because they were fighting the Comanches originally, they were fighting them with muskets, and the Comanches could shoot like 6 arrows in 10 seconds. So they were just lighting these fucking soldiers up because they couldn't reload.
Right.
So they would wait for the initial volley and then they'd charge in. And they also they were such great horsemen, they could actually shoot underneath the horse's neck. So they'd hold on to the reins somehow where they were under the horse's neck, and they were protected, and they were shooting at the soldiers.
Yeah.
And they were shooting from horses. Nobody knew how to do that before. Everybody got off the horse to shoot.
Yeah.
And they were shooting while they were riding.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad for the horse, but he's covering concealment.
Well, that's how the Comanches apparently dominated, is that they had so many horses. They were rich in horses. They were the ones that figured out how to master the horse the best. They also used small horses. They didn't use like these big horses that the Americans used.
Right.
And they were small people. Comanches were fairly small people.
Yeah. No, it is it's a fascinating history. I've spent more time reading sort of the military aspects of the Indian Wars, right, from the U.S. military side of things, and occasionally a book will stray into sort of, okay, well, let's look, from a perspective of the whichever tribe they were in battle with, but not usually very good. So I'll pick up this book because it's an amazing history, and you're right, it's not that long ago.
There's another great book. There's quite a few of them. Blood and Thunder. It's about Kit Carson.
I read that. Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, that dude. Right?
He was a beast.
Get him on the show.
My God.
Yeah, he was tremendous, right?
Yeah.
And from nothing, right? Came from nothing.
Right.
So
and was a small guy. Wasn't had a soft voice and.
Yeah, there was a show, Men Who Made America, I think, or. It was a follow-on from that, but they had a handful of episodes about Kit Carson, but they kind of went through. They picked out some of the individuals you would imagine, right? I mean, Daniel Boone and some of the other characters as the Frontier. I think the Men Who Built a Frontier, I think is what it was called. It was a follow-on to that series that they did about the men who built America. Which seems misogynistic, but
the women probably helped.
They behind every great titan of industry there was. A woman and several of his mistresses. But I think that this thing about building the frontiers was interesting. They tried to provide a perspective from the Native American Indians' point of view. I don't think they necessarily did a very good job because I think they just had so much room to cover. But it was still worth watching. So it was a good series.
Yeah, I think most of us are pretty ignorant to what goes on the reservations today, and me included. You know, you hear these horrible stories of alcoholism and poverty, and you know, it's just they live in these nations inside of a nation. That's what's very strange. And the only thing that really, you know, is natural resources that can help them, but really gambling becomes a big revenue source for a lot of them, and then
people are trying to game the system, no pun intended, but people are gaming the system and saying, I'm going to create this non-existent tribe, right? You get that in Washington, D.C. is you can't swing a dead cat without hitting some lobbyist who's trying to push for designation of some obscure element as a tribe, right? So that they can simply apply for a gaming license.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I'm not sure how you turn that around. There's the Native American Indian Museum in D.C. That opened several years back. It's very good. It's a little tough to follow. I will say this much in terms of just the way they've laid the museum out, right? But it's just absolutely full to the ceiling of incredible stories and artifacts and history bits. But it's definitely worth people going to D.C. if they're saying, okay, I'm going to go to the Smithsonian. They should put that one on the list because it's really fascinating. It's really good. Anyway, but what else? Oh, I know what I was going to bring up because I can't come on the show without talking about Huawei.
Oh, so something going on with Huawei again?
Only on the periphery. Today, the Trump administration signed this first portion of a deal with China, and so it's a trade pact, right? There's been this trade battle, obviously, and I just thought I was flying out here, and I was thinking about it. It's interesting dynamic, right? Because people talk about this current administration as not having any strategy, and sometimes it does seem, frankly, that way. But I was thinking the other day that there is actually this an interesting split in terms of how they're dealing with China. So on the one hand, we've got this softening of the trade war. They're going to, as a result of signing what they signed today with China, as sort of a first stage trade agreement. It mostly involves, increased purchases by China of U.S. goods. There's some talk about them scaling back their theft of intellectual property.
Scaling back.
That's
a hilarious way.
Yeah. We're going to do it.
Maybe we won't steal so much.
Yeah, we'll take. We're not going to stop stealing, but there's that element to it. But at the same time as they're doing this, and as a result of that, we're going to cut in half our tariffs on quite a bit of a large amount of goods, and I think we're going to drop the idea of imposing more tariffs on some other goods. But even while we're doing that, so that's happening, right? But as we're doing that, we're also ratcheting up pressure and some sanctions and some legislation against the technology side of things. So we're still coming down on Huawei. Congress is trying to push through something that's going to make it even more difficult for U.S. companies to do business with them overseas. But I think it's interesting, right? Because there's some people I think in Washington who go, well, we can't do both. Well, of course you can do both. Right? You can talk to the Chinese in real terms and say, yeah, let's focus on the trade war. We're going to do this. We're going to make it a little bit easier. Let's create a trade environment where it's good for both of us. At the same time, you know what? You're still, stealing our shit, and Huawei's still a national security threat. So we're still going to focus on this. And this is not saying I'm singing praises of this current administration. I'm just saying that any administration should be able to operate on different levels, right? When it comes to the same, but we don't. We haven't seemed to do that. It's like with Iran, Well, okay, we're in the past, if they just gave some indication that they were going to play ball with us, we'd ease up on the sanctions, right? Even though they hadn't done anything about their pursuit of terrorism and other things that they were doing. Because we felt like in Washington, I think sometimes D.C. is like, oh, you can't do two things at one time that seem to be conflicting. Well, the real world says I think that you can. So I think China gets it. Now, I don't think they're going to stop stealing.
It seems to be how they operate.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider the fact that the government is so inexorably connected to Huawei. Like when you were explaining how big business and the government are hand in hand. They're not two separate entities. They work completely together. Mm-hmm. And so with Huawei, since they have been busted, having third-party access to data and stealing packets and stuff with routers, because they have done that, you got to think, well, that's probably a part of the way they do business.
Well, it is. It's in their system. I mean, they made a decision decades ago, right? This is how we're going to achieve superiority in the world, right? We're going to get to the top of the food chain by skipping all the cost and pain of research and development. We're just going to hoover up everything we can from not just the U.S., but everybody. So, part of this, all this pushback against China has been specifically trying to say, look, you got to stop that, right? Mm-hmm. We understand it. We're calling you out on it. We're doing it. Now, we've tried doing that a handful of times in the past in a half-hearted manner. This time, I think the Chinese understand we're more serious about it. And we are trying to implement certain measures that will prevent some of that theft. But at the same time, I think, as you said, it's part of how they do business, right? We're not going to. So I think we have to be pragmatic in all of this and think, it's good that we're pushing them on it. It's good that we're telling them. It's good that we're trying to rebalance the trade environment. That we're calling out Huawei. That we're talking to our allies about not doing business with them, because all they really want is they want an access point, right? Mm-hmm. So if they do business with the UK, suddenly in this seamless world of communications, now they've got an entry point into the US. So it's we're working to try to get our allies to stay on board with us about that. But the Chinese, they subsidize Huawei, and the government does in a big way, and we just have to be realistic, right? We're not going to change their behavior in a major way. They're just going to become more sophisticated or more obtuse about how they do it.
Well, the best evidence to me that there's really something going on is that Google's even stepped in. Right, Google's even say we won't even give you our access to Google Store anymore. If you want to have a Huawei phone, even if you buy it from overseas, it will not work in the Google ecosystem.
Yeah.
So what Huawei's done is they've started their own little weird app store, and they've started creating their own apps. They're essentially frozen out of the ecosystem that Google provides and the Google Play Store provides. But you can sideload some apps by going to the website. Like you can download some of them and put them on a phone. But they're essentially relegated to these weird Chinese versions of a lot of the popular applications, and it's a very limited selection. And when it comes to high-end cell phones, like what is the new Huawei phone? I think it's called the Mate 30 Pro. They announced another one. This is the other thing.
Just now?
Yeah. Right. Well, Mike Baker, fuck him.
They literally had announcements today in London.
Teach that son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. So their phones, they come out with new ones all the time. Like an iPhone, which is the top of the food chain in America, right? They come out once a year.
Yeah.
Once a year, they bang out a new phone. Huawei's cranking these fucking bad boys out every couple of months, and every couple of months, they have a giant leap in improvement. More megapixels, better night vision, more storage, more battery life, more this, more that, higher pixel density in the screens. So their phones literally are the top of the food chain phones. It's really kind of fascinating because a lot of American phones, like look at that bad boy, P40 design gets leaked showing triple Leica camera. Yeah, so they're using like these fucking incredible cameras.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of similar.
So it's sort of similar to the iPhone.
Similar.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We copy them a lot.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, that's a design element of it.
Yeah.
But I think, look at Huawei. We've been banging on about them for some time. Congress has been trying to take actions. And at the end of this past year, 2019, Huawei reported, some 20% increase in their revenues.
Yeah, of course.
So
now people are talking about them. Well, I know a lot of people that before this.
That's what
Google
I'm actually
thing,
doing. I'm actually, I got a contract with Huawei, so that's why I keep banging on.
The Google thing really fucked them up because before that, a lot of the tech guys in America were buying them from Amazon or buying them from websites and then just putting their SIM cards in it and using it, even though AT&T won't sell them and Verizon won't sell them. But now that won't even work anymore because now you don't have access to the Google Play Store. If they could figure out a way to sweet talk their way back into the Google Play Store, they would be the biggest fucking cell phone company in the world.
Yeah,
they offered developer $26 million to build apps for its flagship phones after being banned from using Google's App Store. Yeah, but the thing is, like, building the apps is not good enough. You have to have apps that everybody's using.
Right.
If you make your own Instagram, nobody gives a fuck. You're not on Instagram. Are you on Instagram? It says there are major apps available through Huawei's app gallery, such as Amazon, Snapchat, TikTok, and Fortnite. but most popular apps are still missing. That's interesting. Amazon's like, fuck you. We want some money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
We
mean,
want some money.
that.
Jeff Bezos
that's
going
what
through a
it's all
divorce.
about.
Come get some money. I got a new hot chick and she likes money.
Have you seen his new? Is it his new wife now or just his girlfriend?
I think it's just his girlfriend. She
Yeah.
used to be married to the former owner of the UFC, or she used to be married to one of the current owners of the UFC.
Oh, okay. All right. So she
likes
stepped up. She stepped
Well,
up, man.
The owner of the UFC is a very wealthy man too, but these
Not Bezos wealthy.
No,
Yeah.
he's on next level wealthy. That's like if you get divorced, for sure you're getting $1 billion.
Yeah.
He's got 150. He can give you $1 billion just to shut you up. Just give her $1 billion. Let's get this over with.
Hell.
Let's get this over with, Marty. Let's sign the paperwork.
But I can see he's a handsome man. I can see him attracting a really hot woman.
I don't think
Yeah.
you're right. I think
you
you're
know
being
what?
sarcastic. Look at that face.
Wow.
He looks like a guy in a movie.
He looks a little like Paul Schaefer in that picture. You remember the old David Letterman's old band leader?
Look at this. Yeah, you're right. He does. Yes, Dave.
Yeah. Sure.
Jeff Bezos reportedly threw a star-studded birthday bash for his girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez. Look at her. She's like, cha-ching!
Wow.
Someone should Photoshop dollar bills on her glasses.
But you know what? That's
dollar
not
signs.
that's not a really good picture of her. She doesn't look. She's got a weird
She's hot as fuck,
face.
dude.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, but she's hot as fuck and almost 50.
50th
okay.
birthday.
Yeah.
50th birthday?
Just
Yeah.
had it? Okay.
Look,
I wonder what he
women
got her.
today
What
at
do you
50,
buy when you?
you buy her whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah.
With Jeff Bezos.
I got you a
Women
card.
today at 50, they keep it together. It's a different 50.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, when a lady was 50, that was a dead lady. She's barely alive. But now, 50-year-olds, they're in the gym doing squats. They look
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah.
It's different. They exercise.
People now imagine you like cruising gyms looking for girls doing squats.
No, I'm just saying. I've seen 50-year-olds
Yeah.
that are in very good. Like who's that? What's that girl? Elizabeth Hurley. All right.
Oh yeah.
All she's a fucking movie star. Her Instagram is all pictures of her in her underwear. You know why? Because she's
she
like
looks good
53.
in her underwear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's 54. She's 54, and she knows the fucking sand is thin on that hourglass. There
Yeah.
ain't a lot at the top chamber. There ain't a lot left.
Yeah.
So she's she's showing them goods. That
She
Instagram
was-
is all
who
her
was
in her
she with?
underwear.
That name. Who was she with? She was with. Oh, there she is.
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant. That's right.
Dude, look
That's
how hot
right.
she is.
Yeah.
54. Like if you saw her, give me another one of those, Jamie. What do you got here? Give me another one of them bikini. There's a bunch of bikini pictures. That there. Like if you saw her somewhere, you would go, oh, that's a
not 50.
35-year-old
Yeah,
beautiful
it's not
woman.
54. 54.
It's different these days.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of. I will say this though. There are a lot of filters out there now.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I could look 12. But look at that one in the middle. That doesn't look filtered. The one that right there.
No, that looks
doesn't
like a
look very
party picture.
filtered.
Yeah.
That looks like her part. That
Yeah.
bitch, she's hot.
She definitely looks. Yeah. She
She's
looks
hot as
right
fuck.
like she just came off the set from Austin Powers.
Yeah, she's fucking hot, man.
Yeah.
She's still hot. Like legitimately hot. Like people go, yeah, but she's 54. You go, shut the fuck up. What are you?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you, man?
Yeah.
Look at that one, the right with the boobs.
Oh.
Woo!
Yeah.
Take
now,
it.
but when was that taken though? When was
Last
it?
week.
Last week.
Shut your mouth. Stop ruining my dreams.
That was just on Monday.
Don't ruin
Look at
dreams,
that.
Mike
no,
Baker.
You're right. You're
She's
right.
hot as fuck.
Yeah.
She's putting in the work.
Yeah. That middle picture, I'm not sure about the middle picture with the two soldiers there. I'm not sure whether was that taken in Liechtenstein or where
what
these
is up with
soldiers
them?
from.
What's up with their fake mustaches?
Yeah.
Do they have painted on mustaches?
Do you think they got a whole army of guys like that come out on the battlefield dressed like that?
London Coliseum. Do they make them put rosy cheeks on?
No, those are natural. Yeah. It comes like that. That's just,
Yeah.
that's the British weather. Cold and damp gives you cheeks like
How
that.
weird.
Yeah.
Is that they have fake mustaches, though,
Yeah, it's
right?
for the ballet. It's for the Nutcracker.
Oh, for the ballet.
Right here, English National Ballet.
I thought there were a
the
couple of
ballet.
Marines,
The ballet.
a couple of commandos.
Just make that picture bigger and cut those dummies out. She looks hot. And look at the
Yeah.
one right next to it. Go to the one picture right next to that one, Jamie. That one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, whoa,
Come on,
whoa,
son.
whoa.
She's hot as fuck.
Okay.
She's hot as fuck.
It's quite the piece of jewelry she's got there hanging between those
Woo!
things there. Yeah.
It's just amazing that this is
Yeah.
that women can do this now. Like you couldn't do couldn't do that before.
Yeah.
It's like you hit a wall, and that's welcome to the wall.
But here's what I would say. They would argue. I think those same hot women would argue that for dudes it's different. You can be a schlub at 54, right? You can just walk out there. You don't give a shit. You're just kind of like
Jack Nicholson.
whatever. Yeah, like Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson's 1,000 years old, and he's still banging 20-year-olds.
Yeah. I don't know how he does that. I see
Jack Nicholson
sidelines at a Lakers game. You think, oh my god.
I know.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's like most women find him repulsive, but you don't want most women.
Yeah.
You want the women that don't find you repulsive. And when you're really, really famous, that's a considerable number. That's what's crazy. It's
that's true.
So like there's 300 million plus people in this country. There's probably of dating age. Let's just say there's 70 million women that could be dating Jack Nicholson. Look at him there. It's probably, I'm probably off, but let's say out of those.
So 70 million that he could choose from.
Yeah, let's say it's 100 million. Wow. Let's get crazy. Let's say it's 100 million.
That's quite the picture.
Out of those 100, look at that one.
Let's leave that one out. That's my
perfect.
favorite.
Leave that one out. Yeah. Out of those 100 million, 90 million of them would think he's disgusting. 90 million. So 90 million women would be like, what the fuck? Out of those 10 million, and those 10 million that are left, 5 million would be like, he's not that bad. Yeah. And then 1 million would be like, I'd fuck him right now.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
I think 1 million?
100
1 million would fuck that right now?
Yes. Yeah, 1 million.
They all live here.
Wow. They're all in Southern California.
So right. There's some from North Dakota that just want to come to LA. Jack's going to make me famous. He blew up my Instagram.
Yeah, I tell you, I can see that. I can see getting in your Kia and driving across country to fuck that.
Look at his glasses.
Man.
Just look at everything about him. Cheeseburger, fries, doesn't give a fuck.
Oh, there you go. There he's back in his heyday.
That was when he was young.
That dude, man.
He looked like shit back then. Look at that picture.
Look at that collar, though. That was back when a collar meant something.
Yeah. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And, he's keeps on rocking in the free world.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing. That's what women would say is how come we have to? I mean, you hear that all the time, right? How come our society requires us to do 1,000 squats a week and
they're right.
This mook over here, he doesn't have to do anything and he's still pulling.
But the response to that would be, you don't even have to be rich. If you're hot and you're a woman, you just have to be nice.
Yes. Yeah.
A guy who's hot, good luck. What are you going to get out of that? You ain't getting shit out of that, stupid. Go get a goddamn job.
Yeah. No, you got it. I think I read some study somewhere, and I've put it out of my mind, but I do remember there was an aspect of it that did say, what do women see as an attractive element of a man? And to this day, it's still the ability to provide. Yeah. Right? Just like it's a million years ago, right? Jeff Bezos,
Look at that smile she has on her face. She's not bummed out to be with him.
Now, it would have been a different story if we were cavemen and you had to rely on Jeff Bezos to provide.
Right.
That's not happening.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's... anyway, so Amazon's doing business with the new App
Huawei.
Store.
Yeah, that's kind of sneaky.
Yeah.
And TikTok's a Chinese company already.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And now,
and there's some talk. I mean, they've been making efforts, to limit the ability for TikTok to do business.
Really?
I think the U.S. military has instructed all personnel to stay off of TikTok, or not to use TikTok. Yeah. Because,
really?
Yeah. Again, because of the same concern. The whole idea is this platform. Because these companies can argue all they want to that they're independent from the Chinese authorities, but ultimately, if the Chinese authorities knock on their door and say, "We would like access to your database because we want to hoover up all the information about every U.S. military person that's stationed wherever," or they're going to do it.
They're trying to get one of the top TikTok executives in here.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Not really.
Yeah, well,
not really interesting at all. Not interesting to me.
So it's not happening.
No. Fuck you.
No. I don't even understand TikTok. I mean, I know the kids use it. Kids like it.
Look at this.
Make TikTok videos.
It's considered a cyber threat. Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel Robin Ocha, an Army spokeswoman, told military.com, "We do not allow it on government phones."
There you go.
Whoa.
Look at that.
A cyber threat.
An effective tool for reaching young people of generation. How old is Generation Z?
They're 12. What is that? That's my daughter, who's 11, is fucking all about TikTok. Yeah. She's teaching me TikTok dances. I'm learning TikTok dances.
That looked good, actually. That was a good move.
You'd blow up if you did some.
TikTok dances?
Dude, you'd be
I'm not trying to blow up, bro. I'm not trying. But my daughter, literally, she thinks it's hilarious. She's teaching me TikTok dances, and we practice for like fucking half an hour.
But what the hell is it? Is it just another version of...
It's like little videos.
Okay.
Little videos. But my 11-year-old's really into it. Her
Yeah,
friends all think it's hilarious.
Yeah, I was going to say I drive Sluggo to his basketball practices, and occasionally there's 2 or 3 other knuckleheads in the car, and that's all they're doing is they're talking or comparing TikTok videos or anything.
Weird.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm too busy. I'm not interested.
That's what YouTube started as, was just like cat videos until it was, then it was 15-minute videos, and now it's whatever it is.
So you think I should jump on board, Jamie?
I am just saying it's...
you do think I should jump on board?
You shouldn't not jump on board.
Let me ask you this. Isn't OnePlus, isn't that a Chinese company as well?
I don't...
Find out what that is.
Yeah.
OnePlus. Because OnePlus is accepted, right? I mean, OnePlus sponsors a lot of things. They make really high-end phones as well.
Yep.
How come they don't get the same kind of scrutiny?
I suspect they do. It just hasn't hit the press. I mean, TikTok blew up, I guess, as a app that kids like, and so it became. But I didn't realize how old is Generation Z? Is that like a 20?
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's below millennials. It's like the next
thing, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's below millennials. Okay,
that's when we're really fucked. That's when we really get to see the fruits of our labor. How fucked up have we turned this culture? Well, let's check out the 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
Let's see how ridiculous these kids are.
And I not to disappear down a rabbit hole, but I agree. I think we have no idea. We have no idea what technology is, how it's going to impact in the long run. Right? We don't have enough of a test case yet.
Right.
And I can look at my kids and just within my little microcosm of my 3 little dudes, they're sort of their attention span, right, and their ability to, and you can see it impacting it. And you can see it impact the way that they study, the way that they learn, the way. And I don't think we're, again, I'm not a Luddite, but I don't know that we're doing ourselves any favors, right? And
I don't think we're doing ourselves favors either, and I don't think there's any way of pulling back from it. There's no, like, you could tell your kids to pull back. You could maybe get your friends' kids to pull back, but culturally, no one's pulling back from this stuff. They're getting more and more immersed in their phones, more and more immersed in apps and internet, and this the big thing is apps to me. They all get on these little social media apps, like whether it's TikTok or whatever it is, and they're all direct messaging and looking at each other's stuff, and it becomes a giant part of your life. These kids, like, you look at their, my daughter has friends that don't have any restrictions on their phones. My daughter has like a time limit on her phone. She's got 1 hour in the whole day.
Yeah. Right.
Other than that, you're not.
You have to do that.
Yeah, you have to do that. But she's got a little friend that doesn't have any time. And this little friend, like, you would think this girl, like, her fucking skin is growing onto this phone. She never goes anywhere without this phone in her hand, and she's always looking at it. Like, she can't talk to anybody for 5 seconds without looking at her phone, checking TikTok, checking.
But that's she's getting that from her parents or from people see. I mean, look at that. Look at adults. I mean, how many times have you sat in a restaurant and everybody at the table staring at their phone, right? Or you get on I got on the car rental bus today. And I dropped my bag on the thing, and I stood there, and I looked down the bus, and everybody was staring at their phone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
but at least that's dead time, right? You're just sitting on a bus waiting to get to those. Let's check my email real quick. That makes sense. That's not a bad time to use your phone.
Yeah, in the old days, you'd start up a conversation with the guy next to you. So, where are you from? Omaha, huh? And no, you wouldn't. Never mind. Maybe. I don't know where I was going with that.
You could, but then you'd want to call Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Do you see anything suspicious? Yeah, this fucking guy talked to me on the bus.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. He wanted something he referred to as a conversation.
That's my favorite. If you see anything suspicious, call this number. Everything's suspicious.
Yeah.
The whole
see
world's
something, say
suspicious
something.
To me.
Yeah. No, what do you think about this? Have you seen this latest dispute between Apple and the government?
No, what's the latest?
Well, we had the shooting down in Pensacola. And so it was a Saudi soldier who was down there for flight instruction and killed 3 people in the classroom. They're finally taken out by deputies because we don't allow our soldiers to carry weapons on the base. And anyway, point being is that when this happened, he had 2 phones. Apple. I think one was a 5, one was a 7. And so the FBI got the phones. They went to Apple, but asked for assistance with the first one. I don't know which phone they were asking for. And Apple claims that we provided assistance. We gave them access to iCloud data backup and some transactional records and what they were asking for. And then they went to Apple, I think just a week ago or so, with requests for assistance with the second one. And they subpoenaed Apple a couple of days later, said, we need assistance in getting into these phones. It's still the same problem that they had, 3 or 4 years ago, the San Bernardino shooting.
Yes.
Remember And so we had that big kerfuffle where they were saying, look, Apple's not assisting. They're not helping us get into this. Government had to go to, as it turns out, to an Israeli forensics group, spend a lot of money to get cracked into these phones. Anyway, so Bill Barr, the Attorney General, came out just yesterday, past couple of days, and he's been lambasting Apple, saying, you're hampering this investigation. You're not helping us in terms of dealing with this terrorist incident. And Apple's saying, what the fuck? We are providing some assistance. So we're back in that same thing that we were in 4 years ago, where you got this battle over access and pushing an investigation forward, and the concern over privacy.
What do they want that Apple's not willing to provide?
Well, they want access to the phones. The idea was initially they were trying to get a backdoor in that could be used by law enforcement to get into the iPhone.
So you see it here. Trump wants Apple to unlock the Pensacola shooter's iPhones. Here's why it won't. What is well, first of all, this is CNN, which is fake news.
Oh, fake. It's all fake news. Faux.
It says, we have always maintained there's no such thing as a backdoor just for the good guys. Backdoors can be exploited by those who threaten our national security and the data security of our customers, Apple added. Today, law enforcement has access to more data than ever before in history, so Americans do not have to choose between weakening encryption and solving investigations. We feel strongly encryption is vital to protecting our country and our users' data. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't understand, what are they looking for that they won't let these guys find? It's one thing that, backdoors, but I'm not talking about a backdoor. I'm talking about, there should be a way that they can get into the phone, right? There should be a way that you can, not just the iCloud backup, but you could open up the phone and do it with the Apple should have some skeleton key or something like that.
Well, that's what they're saying they're not going to provide. They're not going to provide a software solution to allow them access to get into these phones.
But what else could he have on his phone if it's iCloud backed up? An iCloud backup is essentially your phone, but it's in the cloud.
Right, but you can also turn that off. So,
but have they turned it off? Has he turned it off?
I don't know the details of that, but I would suspect so. But there's other data that you can access from that phone that would be relevant to this. Now, I tend to, in this situation, I tend to side with Apple. I understand the Attorney General. His responsibility is whatever, protecting American citizens. So he's going to have this position, but. Apple's basically saying, look, we're not going to break the terms of our contract with all the people that have iPhones where we're providing them with privacy. And they're also, I think, saying to some degree, look, we understand that criminals can use encryption, right? I mean, they do, right? They take advantage of the encryption that's available and the lack of access. But so do millions of citizens, right, who use the iPhones just to keep their bank records or whatever they have on there, right? And so the encryption benefits everybody in a sense. Obviously, it benefits the criminals. Now, I think I also kind of side with Apple at this point because, frankly, I think technology has kind of made some of these arguments moot, meaning that there are ways to get into these phones now. So the Bureau or the government doesn't have to just go to Apple and say, please let us in. Right?
There was boxes that the police were buying that would allow you to hack into phones.
Yeah,
right?
there's several companies. The companies that are allowing or that are developing access or ability to access these phones, the competition's been increasing. And what happens, people get better at it, right? And so they develop new techniques. And
but then the problem is bad guys can buy them. So they can get a hold of your phone, they can steal your phone from you, and then open it up and then use your phone to text people or get weird with you.
Yeah, and so then what are you saying? You're saying, okay, well, a company that's got that access point, like the Israeli company or several others out there, Gray Shift and a few others that provide this. So then you're relying on them to control who they're selling to. And some of these companies sell only to the government and to whoever is DEA or. And so I guess the point being is that I don't think the old arguments of even a few years ago that says we can't get in, so we need Apple's assistance. I think that's kind of going by the wayside. And the government does have the ability to get in there at this point. So I'm not quite sure why. They're picking a fight. Again, I don't know all the details but I don't know why they're picking a fight.
Is it possible that they can't get in the phone? Is that possible? Because they're saying backdoors can be exploited. Mm-hmm. Okay, but if you give Apple a phone and say, hey, I don't know the password of this, can you get in there?
Apple can.
They can get in there.
Yeah, Apple can. They don't want to hand over that ability of that software because, again, it's a commercial issue, right, for them.
Right, but shouldn't it be possible if they don't want to hand over that software that they could just open it for the government and the government doesn't have to get the software?
Yeah, the government's made that argument to them before. Doesn't, for whatever reason, because I think a part is the optic, right? That says, okay, well, apparently Apple's willing to do this. I think they just want to hold the line and say absolutely not, because I think they're looking at this from almost a pure commercial perspective.
I kind of understand that, but then I kind of say, well, this guy's a fucking terrorist and
you would
a
think
mass shooter.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you've got a contract with all these people that says, okay, I'll protect your privacy, but you think that would be, you're abdicating your ability to hold them to that contract if you go out and shoot a few people. Right?
Is the guy still alive? The shooter?
No.
Okay, so what's the fucking problem? He doesn't have any privacy. He's dead.
It's a good point.
Open up the phone.
Yeah, it's just I just find it interesting. We're back having that same argument that we had a few years ago, right? And we haven't. And I think, like I said, I'm not sure why Barr is pushing this argument necessarily the way he is. I mean, I get what his position has to be given his job as Attorney General, but I think we're past that point. I think there's hacking solutions that are legitimately available through forensics groups that have been developing these things that can assist the government to do this. So I just found it. I found it interesting because
it is interesting because it's like I understand that Apple does not want to open up too much to the government's demands, and if they do, look, we don't have a tyrannical government, but what if we did? I mean, like what's going on with China and Huawei? It's like very similar. If Apple sort of opens up the door to the government and they slide right in and start really using Apple's software in their phones to manipulate people and access data that they really shouldn't have access to, people that are under investigation, and it's just like it opens up the door to all sorts of other weird possibilities. I think.
Yeah. Well, it goes back and it starts to feed that belief that, the government's spying on everybody. The reality is they neither have the resources or the interest, frankly, or the ability to spy on everybody.
Well, this is what I always say to people, like, who's spying on you? There's another person? So there's one person that just spies on you all day. So imagine.
You're assigned one person.
There's 300 million people in this country. There's 300 million spies spying on those 300 million people. Is that what's going on?
You got one target. That's all you do all day long is watch one person.
But then there's the thing about them collecting data, like the NSA collecting data and collecting all your phone calls, collecting all your text messages.
What's a bigger threat is Amazon or Google or you know what? You turn on your Samsung TV. You know what it's doing? It's watching you.
Don't watch me.
Your TV's got the ability to watch you. It's called smart interactivity.
Yeah.
So it's got a camera, and the whole idea was, well, we'll do this so that we can figure out where you're, what you're watching and what you think of it. So not only is it watching, but it could listen.
Yeah.
So it's the commercial side that's collecting information, not necessarily for nefarious purposes. They're collecting it for marketing purposes and to make more money, which is what they're in business to do. Yeah. But they're the ones that are hoovering up data, right? That then leaks out because somebody hacks, grabs all that information, and then they use it for something nefarious.
Well, I get nervous when I hear about companies like Facebook that are thinking about starting their own cryptocurrency. And I'm like, whoa.
Are you a believer in Bitcoin
money now? Or? I'm not a not believer, but I'm not like invested in it. It's not like something I had a guy on several times, Andreas Antonopoulos, who's a big Bitcoin expert, and very, very bright and interesting guy. And I really enjoyed talking to him about it, but he's all in. Like, he does all his banking with Bitcoin, pays his rent with Bitcoin, gets paid with Bitcoin. Everything is Bitcoin with him. And, he's loved by the Bitcoin community and all this different stuff. But at the end of the day, I just don't totally understand how you can have so many of them. Like, how many cryptocurrencies are there? And then if you don't have so many of them, well, who's to say when you could stop making them?
Right. Who's the arbiter to say, no, that's legitimate or that is not? I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. I fall in the category of I don't understand it. To be fair, I haven't taken the time to understand it.
You can't think about everything. This is my take on it. You can't. You don't have enough time to think about everything. So I'm letting that one play out on its own. And I'm going to just sit back, and when it's 100%, all in, when everybody's like, look, Bitcoin it's just like money.
Yeah.
Okay. But until then, and they kind of predicted it was going to be just like money quite a few years ago, and it never really did hit that. But you can buy some things with Bitcoin. There's some companies that let you buy computers with Bitcoin.
I'm sure there's a fair amount of transaction that goes on, from what I understand. But again, I don't understand. I don't understand how it's backed necessarily. I'm sure I'll probably get all sorts of comments now, like, you're a fucking idiot. You should be heavily involved in Bitcoin. But I buy gold bars, and
gold's real.
Plant them out in the backyard.
They've been killing people for gold forever.
Yeah, exactly.
That's legit shit.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about it. Gold and catheters. I'm stocking up on both.
Those are both going to be really important in the future. But gold is a weird one, right? It's because, why are we still so invested in this soft, shiny metal? And all the shit that people need. Why gold? I don't even like it as jewelry. I think it's kind of tacky.
Yeah. When I met my wife, I was still wearing a gold chain from my old Miami Vice days. Yeah, she still doesn't let me forget that. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. It wasn't like Flavor Flav or anything. It wasn't big and chunky, but it was. I thought it was understated.
Was like a herringbone sort of.
It was like a Greek key thing.
Greek key thing.
Yeah. I lived out in that part of the world for a while, and So anyway, as it was explained to me that it wasn't as hep as I thought it was at the time, and so I put it away with all my other gold jewelry, and my boys will fight over for it when I'm dead.
Women will let you know. They'll clean you up. They'll go, hey, you gotta stop with that stupid shit. I thought that was I thought I'm looking fly.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I walked out the other day. We were getting ready to go to some function, and I come walking down the steps. It was a casual thing, right? And I thought, okay. So, and I'm not a naturally social person in the sense that I don't like to go to big gatherings of people. I mean, I like going out to a dinner or just to hang out for drinks with, like small 6-8 people that I know, right? And then I know this is where we're going. I don't have to walk into a crowd and go from little group to little group having, some small conversation. I'm not good at it. So, but we were going to one of these things. So I think in my mind, I thought, So anyway, I come walking down the steps. I'm wearing a cardigan. And my wife is walking up the steps to get something that she forgot upstairs. And she stops on the stairs and she looks. And so as I'm coming downstairs, I see her stop down there and she's staring at me. I'm thinking, what? And now I thought, I liked this cardigan. I bought it in the shop. I thought, this looks pretty good. I thought it had like a Matthew McConaughey vibe to it. And she's staring at me like, what the fuck is that?
What color is it? What color
gray.
is it?
It's a nice
Can
gray.
you pull up a picture of a gray cardigan, please?
Yeah.
I want to get an image in my mind.
Yeah,
you look like
a picture of Matthew McConaughey in a cardigan.
I don't think
somebody must have Googled that. No, I think
Is he a cardigan wearer? Is he a big cardigan wearer?
That was the word, because I thought, okay, I'm being pretty chill here. That was another word I got from my kids, and I just thought that it was presenting the right vibe. I'm going to a party. I'm casual. I'm relaxed. I'm going to be. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyways, she made me go upstairs and change it.
Damn, she made you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is my second go around, and I've learned that. I'm not as smart as I used to be.
Look at that.
Look, see, that's what I'm talking about.
That's when he was in Dallas Buyers Club.
Hey, well, you wanted a cardigan.
That's what I'm talking about.
Jesus Christ, look at that. That was when he was like really sick. Like that fucking guy has never looked the same again since he lost all that weight for that movie.
Yeah.
He's been drawn out since then. That's got to be so devastating for your system. To put yourself through that kind of shit?
I think it must be worse than gaining weight.
It's way worse.
Yeah.
Look at his face, man. I mean, he looks like a dead man. God damn, he knocked out of the park in that movie, though.
Yeah, he did. It was a great movie. I hope he got paid well enough for it.
You can't. There's not enough money in the world to make you lose that much weight.
Yeah.
The worst one, though, was the mechanic. Not the mechanic, the machinist.
Yeah.
With, what the fuck's his name? Christian Bale. Yeah. Christian Bale did the most horrific weight cut. I've never seen anybody that skinny in a movie. I mean, he was like legitimately days before death.
Oh god.
Yeah, look at that. Look at what he looked like.
That was a toy. That's a computer rendering. There you go.
Yeah, and then he was Batman like 6 months later, and he got on the fucking Mexican supplements.
It's that back and forth. It's that back and forth that'll do your body in.
Terrible.
Right? Yeah.
Terrible for you.
If you can maintain a kind of a consistent weight.
Look at that though. Jesus Christ.
There's got to be some shopping in there, photoshopping.
No. If you see the movie, man, he was eating an apple and a can of tuna a day. That's it. That was all he was eating. And what happens then is your body starts eating itself. And so look how he looked in Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
He got real fat to play Dick Cheney. Damn, that's like Bert Kreischer fat. That's fat as fuck. Look at that.
That's a lot of fat right there.
Yeah. God damn. Well, Yeah, he's dedicated to his craft. But here's the thing: the movie sucked.
Yeah.
So it's like you almost killed yourself for a movie that sucked.
Did you see the Joker?
Yes.
What'd you think?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
weird
great
how
movie.
it's weird how it's really drawn out both sides. Nobody's sort of like agnostic about it.
Yeah.
Either it sucks or it's great. Right. That's what I keep getting those same responses.
It's a great movie, but it's disturbing as shit. But there's a lot of weird stuff to it, right? It's like it's almost celebrating the idea that the system is broke. We're just gonna fucking shoot everybody who's rich and light everything on fire and let these fucking mentally ill people not take their medication and just run things. And he was Joaquin Phoenix. First of all, it's like he's on another level. Like his portrayal. He's always been an amazing actor, but that movie, boy, they created a work of art with that character.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you bought into it hook, line, and sinker that he was this crazy fuck. And when, spoiler alert, when he shoots Robert De Niro, like there's scenes in that movie that make you just go, wow.
I will say this though, my favorite Joker has always been Cesar Romero. Right there he was.
Oh,
it was
the
a little
Batman
picture.
TV show?
Yeah,
Really?
from the TV show. Oh yeah, hands down.
Really?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I'm old. I'm fairly old school.
That's terrible. He does look pretty goddamn crazy there.
He
doesn't he?
Ah,
damn, he looks pretty good there.
Yeah.
I'm taking it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
Not bad.
He kind of, he sort of, that was
Yeah,
it.
Heath Ledger's my favorite.
Yeah. Heath Ledger was good.
He was great too. Jared Leto couldn't.
Nah.
Yeah. He can go pound sand with that.
But the
character.
Joker's got great Oscar nominations, right? I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think he got a bunch.
He's up for
yeah.
Best Actor.
I watched
that's what I
that
thought,
Suicide Squad, the Jared Leto one. It was like, oh, it's just a little too stylish.
Did you see the new one he's in? He's
No.
playing Morbius, who's a vampire in he's in the Marvel movies
No,
now.
give me a picture. Let me see what you got here.
It's
Does it look good?
Marvel
Does it
thing.
look good?
Every movie's a Marvel
actually a
or a
weird-
DC Comics movie
into this
nowadays.
comic
Are you getting upset?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a piece of the action, but still.
I remember Morbius. Oh, this is Jared Leto playing
Yeah,
Morbius.
just kind of skip through.
Wow.
Gets superpowers and
So he becomes a vampire?
yeah. He's like a guy who was dying, had a blood disease, and he goes like one last thing to figure it out. And I guess the bats helped him.
Whoa.
Got some sort of power from
this
the bats.
is crazy. And he comes back jacked.
Yeah, and he starts fucking people up.
Woo, I like
Yeah.
it. When does this come out?
I think the summer.
Come
I just put the
on.
trailer out the other day, so I don't remember the exact.
Wow.
I'd say here.
I had
Try
no
to-
idea the bats had that ability, but okay.
They
Yeah, summer.
don't, bro. It's a movie.
Oh, it's a movie. Oh, I can't.
In theaters this summer.
All right,
Morbius.
fine.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm all in, Jared. I take it back.
We had bats in our attic, believe it or not. We had
Did
bats
you?
in our attic in Idaho, right?
Really?
Well, I'm sitting outside on the porch one day. I know, again, I'm sorry about this, but I'm sitting out on the porch and I look up and it's the sun's setting. And this thing flies out from the top of the roof. We got like this 4-story brick place, and out comes this thing, and then another one, then another one. We got bats flying out because it's getting dark, and they're coming out of our attic. So I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. So we went to a wildlife specialist who came over, and he kind of staked out the place a couple of nights, figured out what the story was with him, and we eventually got rid of the bats. But
You had to hire a wildlife specialist?
Yeah, to
Why
get
don't
rid
you
of
just
them.
get a tennis racket?
No. Well, there was, it's little baby bats, and the kids didn't want to hurt the baby bats, and so we had to wait for the baby bats to grow a little bit, and then
whack 'em?
Yeah, no, then whack them. Then you shoot them with your airsoft pistol. But the interesting thing about bats, they fly out, they drop down and fly out, but if you stop their ability, right, to go straight back into the hole, they can't get back home. So you create a situation because they can't dip down, then fly up, and then go in, right? They have to come straight in, straight at that. Well, this is fascinating bat stuff. But if I had known that they could create that sort of superpower ability, I would have kept a couple
Harnessed
of them around.
it.
Yeah,
But then you stay
harnessed it.
alive forever. You don't want that.
No.
There's a crazy story about a guy who was, I don't remember where he was, but a bat flew by and hit his hand. Just hit his hand. And apparently the bat had rabies, and he died of rabies like 2 weeks later.
Seriously.
Yeah, apparently rabies is one of those things where if you get bit by something that has rabies, they got to get you in right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, they got to get you in right away, and it's once it takes hold, you're fucking dead. It's 100% lethal. But they can get you if you get in right away. But he didn't even know anything was wrong. He didn't have a visible sign on his hand. Bat flew into the hand of a British Columbia man who died of rabies infection. Yeah, so this thing, it just flew into his hand and left a small cut. He was a 21-year-old kid on Vancouver Island.
Good God.
Health authorities confirmed that the patient was outdoors in broad daylight when the nocturnal creature struck his hand and flew away. He wasn't doing anything risky that would put him in a position that would you encounter bats. Dr. Bonnie Henry of BC's chief provincial health provider. This is an incredibly unfortunate, strange circumstance for this young man and his family.
Okay, so
no visible puncture or scratch marks.
Because apparently they can be microscopic, the cuts.
So he developed the symptoms of rabies 6 weeks after the exposure.
So it's just as well I didn't send the kids up to take care of the bats, is what you're saying. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
He'd been driving and he pulled over the side of the road when a bat flew into him. What the? That's like a horror movie.
Yeah.
You know? It really is.
At a Final Destination, like he got missed and
right. Like
if a bat came back.
I mean, to be fair, it's not a very interesting horror movie, but it's the idea behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
It would only be interesting if it was like World War Z type shit.
Yeah.
It just started. But that's kind of like what rabies is to animals. Rabies turns animals into these sick, really aggressive creatures that want to infect you with whatever they're infected with. They want to bite you.
Yeah, raccoons.
Yeah.
I mean, right. You remember as a kid, though, it was always, the rabies thing was always, you don't want to get rabies because you got to go in for these series of shots in your stomach. Yeah. I always remember that. That was always the story. You know, you got to get.
Why the stomach?
Yeah, I don't know. It was like, don't accept apples on Halloween because there'll be a razor blade in them. It was just sort of like this thing that you always heard as a kid. You're going to get these shots in your stomach, so stay away from raccoons. Yeah, whatever.
Worldwide, only 5 or 6 people have survived a rabies infection. Holy shit!
Those are the people you got to go to when the zombies come, right? You gotta find those people and harness their blood.
BC is home to 17 species of bats, with 10 species found in Metro Vancouver. Wow. Risk from rabies and bats is everywhere in BC. Jesus Christ. 13% of bats tested positive for rabies. 13%!
I always thought of British Columbia as a really nice place to be.
But that's in the province. Amongst bats in the wild, the rate is about 1%. Well, you got a fucking horrible infestation up there, BC. Get your shit together.
Yeah. What are they doing up there?
I'm coming up there at 420.
Isn't Prince Harry and Meghan, aren't they going to Vancouver? We should tell them about the bat thing.
We should.
They won't go. They're not going.
I forgot to post that my shows are for sale in Vancouver. I did, but not today. They're for sale right now. I'm doing Vancouver on 420. I hope I don't get rabies.
Nice. You know what? You pass through to get to Vancouver. You kind of pass through sort of Boise, maybe.
Oh, do you?
Well, not really. Not from here. No, you don't. No.
I'm flying. I'm not driving. Okay. Shit would take days. What are we, on a wagon train?
Don't you travel in an RV to your shows?
Yes. Like fucking Chevy Chase and Family Vacation.
The truckster. Family truckster.
Bert takes a goddamn tour bus everywhere. Bert has a tour bus with his face all over it. Crazy asshole.
Have you ever driven across the country in a?
Yes, when I was a little kid. It's a long time ago. I don't enjoy that kind of wasted time.
Yeah.
But I would like to go.
Not even with the kids getting an RV and drive.
No, they would go crazy. My kids would beat me to death.
Shut up, kids! I'm driving.
They would go, we're not going any further. I think it would be interesting if you had like an agenda, like if you're going to go to Grand Canyon, then you were going to go to Zion National Park. Mm-hmm. You had a bunch of different things to do, and you had months of time, and you can make your way across the country. But just the drive for fucking 5 days straight across the country, that can eat a bag of dicks.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in that. That's boring.
I think you're right. Going to a national parks, in Yellowstone, for example. Anybody who hasn't been to Yellowstone, go to Yellowstone. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's
Don't
amazing.
go into summertime, but go. But I've tried to convince my wife that it's a good idea to get an RV, drive, and spend a couple of weeks with the kids And she looks at me like I'm wearing a cardigan. It's that same look I get. So
well, it seems like a
happening.
good idea, but if it was a really good idea, I think more people would be doing it. I think once you actually start doing it, you're like, what am I doing here? I'm just sitting down all day.
Right.
My back's killing me.
The kids are on screens the whole time.
Yes.
You know, so.
Everyone's, when are we going to be there?
Yeah.
When are we going to be there?
Yeah.
Are we there? How much more time?
That's the whole, yeah. Stop touching me. Stop hitting me. Stop
They get mad at each other.
He said, oh, yeah.
Well, if you're watching screens too, like that's not good for a kid to be watching screens 8 hours a day, all day, just driving across the country while they're playing with their iPads.
Yeah, well, you got to take that away from. Going back to that other, thing.
Yeah,
we
but then what are they
about,
doing? They're staring out the window.
Then they want to talk to you.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, I know. Right?
Talk to me about TikTok dances. That's what they're gonna do.
You're heading that direction. I know. A couple weeks from now, I'm gonna. Somebody's gonna send me a TikTok
video
of you dancing.
Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me. That's not happening. There's a lot of guys who swear by that tour bus life, though. They like it. Like my friend Sturgill Simpson, he travels with a tour bus. He said he would rather spend the whole day in a tour bus than an hour on a plane. Like if he's going to go from one place to the other. He goes, it's like a living room. Like you just sit down and relax. And so him and his band, they just chill. They just hang out in this tour bus and smoke a little devil's cabbage and
sure, yeah. I mean,
kick back and relax.
And it's I can see that. I haven't spent most of my life in airports. I get the idea behind it. You're right. It is a time suck. Getting from point A to point B. But this country is pretty amazing, and there's a lot to see. Right?
Yeah.
There's so much to see, and we tend to overlook that fact. And the Europeans always want to make fun of us because 90% of Americans don't have passports. And then you point out, well, have you driven across Texas? Have you been out west? Have you done these things?
Is it that many don't have passports?
I think it's a high number.
90%?
Yeah.
Really?
The percentage of U.S. Citizens that do not own a passport or do not have a passport, I have a feeling it's coming up soon.
Well, it's interesting. You didn't even used to need one to get to Canada or Mexico. You used to be able to just have a driver's license, get right across. We had a nice friendly agreement with everybody.
Yeah, you just jump across the river.
Yep, not anymore.
Bob's your uncle. No, there's that whole wall thing going up. So apparently not. I don't know where the wall stands.
Well,
I've been
what the
following
wall is it's a great little parkour setup for these Mexican dudes who know how to climb them. They're excellent at it. Percentage of the Americans with passports. Oh, it's rising.
Oh, okay. All right. I take it back then.
Wow, it's more than 40%. Wow.
Okay.
That's interesting.
It used to be true.
Yeah, look at the 1989. It was fucking nobody. back
what was happening in 89?
Yeah, look in 1989. It's like literally less than 5%.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Maybe I'm stuck in 89.
Yeah.
I thought I could see that because the music was great back then. So maybe that's why I'm reliving my 80s.
Is that the Reagan days, 89? I think that's Reagan. Wasn't Reagan president back then? Bush?
Bush.
Cold War?
Yes.
Is that 88?
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Maybe no one wanted to travel because they were worried about the Russians.
I don't know.
88
Still
was
worried.
when I was 20, so I was 22. What is up with that lady? 76% of people in England and Wales have a UK passport. Okay.
I've got a UK passport.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen, so.
Look at you.
Yeah, I know.
How's
right?
that work?
Well, I'm a little upset with Prince Harry, but other than that, it's working out really well.
Are you mad that he left the throne or whatever the fuck he did?
No, I mean,
Doesn't it make sense?
Well, it probably makes sense because I don't know that he's the sharpest tool in the box, and he's probably thinking we can make a lot more money if. But they're not supposed to make any money off of being a member of the royal family, and yet they've trademarked apparently sort of their brand, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and they're not allowed to make any money off of the royal family. So they're given allotments, allowances, living expenses.
How much?
It's a significant amount. Look, they've got a house on the grounds of Windsor Castle they're going to continue to live in. So I guess here's my point. They can do whatever the fuck they want, but it would have been nice if they told their grandmother so that she didn't have to find out about it on the news. I thought that was kind of a
the Queen
spotted dick move, but yeah.
Spotted dick.
Yeah.
The Queen.
She
found out on Twitter. Has Prince Harry left the throne?
That is a remarkably accurate
Thank you.
voice.
I've worked hard at it.
She's so she found out on TV, but they want to be financially independent. They trademarked Duke and Duchess of Sussex in a variety of different ways, apparently, and she's going to go back to doing whatever she did. And
it's that little American hussy he's hooked up with. She's going to turn him into a Kardashian.
It's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, listen, they're already so popular. All they need to do is start endorsing fucking makeup lines and sneakers and watches and shit. Next thing you know, Jed's a millionaire.
Yeah, well, she's got a massive following on Instagram, which I suspect she wants to
go.
Yeah,
start
wants to monetize that thing.
Well, how much do you think they make? Find out how much they make. How much do they make from the royal family?
Might not be public. I don't know.
Not public. You think they hide that shit?
Well, he
would know better than me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're hiding it, but
think they make $1 million a year?
Yeah, oh yeah, more than that. I mean, look, he
Really?
got, I think, from his mother, I think as an inheritance, he got some $9 million.
Prince Harry.
Yeah, and then she's probably worth about $6 million on her own for her acting career. I didn't know what she was acting in, but
that little American hussy has ruined my prince.
he's off to Vancouver, and the guy doesn't even know there's a rabies issue there.
There's a fucking 13% bat rabies problem there, buddy.
Right. Right.
Is that what he's going to go? He's going to go to Vancouver?
Well, they're thinking
Canada?
Apparently they're looking to move part-time to Canada.
They're going to start a reality show. I guarantee you some creepy producer got a hold of them and go, guys, listen, you're wasting your time over here in England. It rains too much.
Yeah. What are you going to do over here? Look, you're pissing away the money she's worth. And he's probably thinking, yeah, I want to get out of this. But then he came out and said, well, we're not going to move to the States. Supposedly he came out and said that. This is also, I can't believe we sound like page 6 or something. But he came out and said, we're not moving to the States until Trump is not president.
Trump is out of office.
Exactly. So,
thank you, Prince Harry, at least for that.
Is this what the Queen gets, but her grandchildren's money isn't public?
Oh, my God. The Queen received $58 million free of tax from the sovereign grant in the 2016-2017 fiscal year.
Damn.
What kind of goofy shit is that?
Wow.
They give them
More than next year.
$58 million.
$103 million.
$103 million in the next year.
It's good to be Queen.
To help finance the extensive renovation of Buckingham Palace. We need more money.
The palace is pretty impressive.
But imagine being a poor person and you find out that the Queen, who literally does nothing, is making $100 million in a year.
Yeah, I see. This is why I don't think I could ever say anything negative about the Queen. I think I got a tremendous amount of it. I feel like her, like she's grandma,
love her?
but I do. I've got
because you have a dual citizenship.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody's brainwashed over there.
Yeah, but she has been a remarkably consistent. But she's got a shit show of a family. Right?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for standing up to me.
Exactly.
That hooligan Joe Rogan and his terrible internet show would be illegal in my country. I deserve that $100 million, you little fuck.
Think about all the public service she does.
Oh, she's amazing.
It's incredible.
Just this alone, that should be worth a lot of money. Just
that's it. Think about it. Each wave is now apparently $103 million. That's a significant amount. No, anyway, I don't know how we got down this one, but
Prince Harry, they left.
Yeah. That's right. They left to go to fucking Rabies Town.
So if she is making $100 million a year, he's probably making 10, right?
It's a significant amount. So I get it. Okay, they want to go again. Who cares?
But they can't make money off the royal family.
They can't make money off the royal family, off the royal brand.
So it's the idea is you're getting paid enough. Yeah. Just what a goofy system. They just give them money for free. Yeah. To be a royal.
Well, and the British taxpayers are saying, like, what the fuck? We're going to keep subsidizing them, and they're going to go to Canada, and we're going to keep paying them, and they're going to live part-time here, and they're not going to do any of the representative or representational work or whatever.
What does that even entail?
Really, I don't know. You got to show up at events.
Well, how about the other prince?
So you got to go to, again.
How about the other prince, the one that's Epstein's friend?
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
What?
Yeah.
First of all, how odd is that guy when they're interviewing him and talking to him?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
The Queen kicked him to the curb very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's very strange.
Yeah.
What is your take on this whole Epstein thing? First of all, can we just agree? Look at that. So you sure she's 18?
So you're telling me that
she does not look 18. She looks 16. Are you sure? You sure?
Man, what a shit show that is.
Yeah, what a shit show. So let me ask you this right off the bat. Yeah. Well, I don't know what I'm going to ask you. He didn't kill himself, right?
I don't believe so.
Thank you.
No. You know me, I'm not a conspiracy guy, right? I don't disappear down rabbit holes very often, but no, I don't think there's any way in hell he killed himself.
Michael Shermer, who's the head of Skeptics magazine, who doesn't believe anything, found out that the tapes were missing and that the cameras didn't work and that the tapes were accidentally deleted from the first time he attempted suicide. And Shermer's like, oh, this is a conspiracy. Like, it was enough evidence that one of the biggest a professional skeptic. Professional, he doesn't believe anything.
No. There's no way I could be convinced that he offed himself.
No way.
So,
he knew too much.
Yeah. And it's astounding, but yeah, what a shit show. But nobody's going to get to the bottom of anything.
But that's a crazy one. Like, they got him in the jail. The guards are somehow or another getting in trouble, so who knows what the guards are going to say. They might get suicided. My favorite part was the guy they chose for his cellmate. Do you see the fucking gorilla they chose for his cellmate?
Yeah. It reminded me of that that old Richard Pryor movie. I don't know if you remember that one.
The guy, look at this fucking guy.
Yeah.
This giant Goomba, this huge Italian ex-cop who's a murderer and a drug runner. I mean, this guy is built like a brick shit house, and this is Epstein's cellmate. Yeah. It's like, what? Like, you can't even make this stuff up. Like,
says he never touched him.
Of course. Why would I touch him?
Nicholas Tartaglione.
Yeah. What does it say? Timeline of events in quadruple homicide? Is that what it says?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So this fucking guy, this giant...
He likes dogs, though.
Yeah, he loves dogs. They keep him from all the people that he killed. Yeah. They bark when they're coming around. You can grab your gun. It's a good move. It's just crazy. There's so many pieces to the puzzle that are so ridiculously obvious. And then when you find out that Clinton flew with him at least 26 times.
Yeah.
26 times.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Hey,
yeah,
Jeffrey's a good guy.
Yeah. No, it's just one of those things. And again, I'm not a buyer on these sort of things, but you look at it, you look at the facts around, and you think there's no way in hell. Yeah. That guy must know you. You would have thought that Epstein would have said to himself, "I'm gonna get killed here if I'm not careful."
Well, he probably didn't think it was ever going to get to the point where they were actually jailing him. When they actually got, because remember he had that deal where he was on work release, so he could just do whatever he wanted and fuck off for 16 hours a day. Then he had to check into the jail at night.
Yeah.
And who even knows what that means? He might have checked in and just went home again. And it seems like they had set something up for him to make it very easy for him to be incarcerated for what should be a pretty heinous crime. I mean, he was,
you would think,
sex with underage girls,
right.
and
sex trafficking.
Yeah,
I mean, not just him doing it. Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it's just the extent to which, and so but then you look at I forget what her name is. His assistant, Giselle. Yeah,
what's his name? Ghislaine.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
How do you say it? What do you say?
It has an S in it, but I've heard it pronounced with the S or without. So Ghislaine or Ghislaine.
Okay.
I don't know.
Ghislaine or Ghislaine. Whatever. G. Let's call her G Rocker.
Yeah.
So G Rocker's out there hiding in the bushes in Colombia or something, right? Where is she?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, she must be you would assume they've deposed her at this point, or
She must have something. She must have some fucking kill switch where if the shit goes down, all the Clinton tapes come piling out onto the fucking floor of
somebody
Glenn
must
Greenwald's house.
You would think. You brought it around to Glenn Greenwald.
Hey, Glenn, it's Bill. Can we talk?
Yeah, maybe you know what? Maybe I should convince. There she is.
That's when she was at In-N-Out reading a book on ex-CIA agents who have been murdered. That's literally what she was reading a book on, right? Wasn't that? Yeah. It was about CIA operatives that have been murdered. So the idea was that what they said, what people believe, and there's many different versions of what people believe, but look how many pictures she posed for. It's so strange. But what many people believe was that what he was doing was compromising a lot of these wealthy, powerful people by getting videotapes of them hooking up with young girls, including Prince Andrew, right?
Yeah. And for whatever reason,
have you heard of anything like this before? Is this something that's been done in the past?
Not that I've heard of. I mean, I'm sure it's anytime you see some freak show, it's never the first time it's happened, right?
Right.
I mean, it's so you have to assume it's happened, but to the degree that it's got this level of celebrities and big time names, I mean,
it works so well. And I'm going to tell you something after the show's over. But
you can just tell me. It's just you and me talking. If you whisper,
I hear you in my ears.
The North Koreans used to do that. Sorry about that. The North Koreans used to. That was their phone security. Is they would get on the phone and when they had something really classified to talk about, they would whisper. Yeah. So I think, good.
That's hilarious.
We'll never figure that out.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Really, that's how they did it?
Yeah. Well, part of it was years ago. I think they just never believed any Westerner could understand Korean. Right? I think that was kind of part of it, was that they just believed we were all too stupid, or we were just so complicated that we'd never be able to figure out what they were saying in their own language.
That's the price you pay for being so insulated, right? You don't really understand what's really going on in the outside world because they don't really have the internet.
When was the last time we talked about North Korea?
It's been quite a while.
We just pushed that right off the front.
But to get back, we can talk about North Korea. But to get back to this Epstein thing, is that a common strategy that intelligence agencies would use, where they would try to compromise people in order to get, like, what would be the benefit if you had, like, if the Mossad was doing that and they were doing that and using that's the theories,
right,
Epstein.
right. Yeah, it's a good point. I'd say from an intel services perspective, I mean, one thing I will say is the U.S. And people are never going to believe this because I'm saying it. They'll say, "Oh, that's bullshit." But the U.S. The agency doesn't do that. We don't use honey traps. We don't do that sort of thing because that sort of leverage it's always going to head south on you. And so we don't, try to coerce somebody in that sort of a relationship that then we can take advantage of. And yet other services do. The Russians being one of them, they do that all the time. Israelis, they've had some very successful efforts to do that. And if you get somebody in that position, it doesn't matter how they're compromising themselves, whether you're putting themselves in with like an Epstein situation where suddenly you've got them, you got video of them with an underage person, or whether they've provided a document that they shouldn't provide. It's all this. The concept is always the same, right? It doesn't matter what that action is. You're getting them on the hook. You're getting something that's leverageable over them, and if they don't just go forward immediately, say, and turn around to their boss and say, "I'm guilty, did this, sorry," then they're compromised. And then you've got them. As an intel service, you've got them. You can start reeling the hook in because now, you know that not only did they do something that provided you with a document, even if it was an unclassified document. If I go to somebody, if I'm developing a relationship with somebody, some target overseas or whatever, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm exploring. This person's got access. They're in an interesting position. They're in an interesting job. And they've got access to information that we want to know. That's priority target. And then I want to say, okay, now I want to develop a relationship a little bit. Maybe I bump into the person at a few parties. Maybe we're in the same parent-teacher organization, whatever the shit is, right? And our kids play on the same soccer team. So then I go and I think, okay, what do I want to do? I want to test the waters a little bit. I'm not going to say, hey, listen, I understand you work at the foreign ministry here in whatever country you happen to be in. How about you give me some documents? But instead, maybe it's something different. Maybe they work at the foreign ministry. Maybe they work at a aerospace business. That's a target. And you say, but you've developed a bit of a relationship, and then you say, yeah, my kid's doing this school project, and it's all about whatever hypersonic flight, and that they work at some aerospace company, and say, do you have anything just on hypersonics, and you're not looking for anything classified, you're just looking for a research paper or a study or something, and if they come back and say, yeah, you know what, here, this is an interesting study, and they now, that act alone, they're not giving you something classified, but that act alone means something big, right? It means they were taskable in a sense, right? They responded to your request for information.
They're suckers.
Not suckers necessarily. It could be an enormously smart person, but and smart people get suckered into it. I guess you could put it that way, but. So anyway, then you go from there. Then you ratchet it up slowly, bit by bit. If you've got the time frame to do it, maybe sometimes you've got a shortened time frame because there's a requirement to get something, and you got to accelerate the whole process. Anyway, but point being is it's all leverageable, and Epstein was obviously getting leverage on all these different people for whatever his purpose was.
What do you think? That's what the question is. Like, what could he possibly? A lot of them were scientists. He went with a lot of like celebrities. There was heads of state.
I don't think he needed money.
Right. Well, what was he?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he just, who knows? Maybe he got off on sort of being the kingpin in this whole thing, it's a good question.
It had to be funded, right? So I mean, there had to be something valuable that they were getting from it. I'm guessing.
I don't know.
It hasn't been spelled out to me.
Yeah.
Like I've tried to figure out the angle, but I mean, I get the idea of you would have leverage over these people, you'd have them in compromising situations, and then they would do things for you. But what would they do for you?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. What is he getting Bill Clinton
it's
to do
a good question.
for him?
Providing him with access, maybe he liked being close to the seat of power, or maybe he liked being close to what he thought was like a royal family member. Maybe who knows? Because it sounds like he had all the money he needed.
Right.
So maybe it was that sort of access that blew his skirt up. I don't know, but it is interesting. But I don't think. I mean, look, it's just like been kicked to the curb. Obviously, they're doing the trial, I guess, to some degree, but I don't know where they stand.
Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen.
We've already swept it under the rug, and there's already news stories out that have got our attention. We forget about things so quickly today. The news cycle is so fast. When something happens, even something as ridiculous as the Epstein case, where it's so obvious that he was murdered, and then Michael Baden goes on 60 Minutes and says this is consistent with someone who was strangled. I've never, in all my years of seeing people hanged, I've never seen them with these kind of fractures. This is fractures are indicative of strangulation.
And that is one serious-minded dude too, right?
Michael
that guy,
Baden,
tremendous amount of experience, and he doesn't blow smoke up anybody's ass, right?
No.
He's very measured, and now obviously he was there on behalf of Epstein's brother, I guess. But anyway, it's one of those things where you think, maybe I'm going to put that down as something we should explore.
I want to go visit that cop in jail. See what he's probably got a fur-lined cell
Taglione?
now. Yeah, he's got a giant 72-inch TV.
Hey, all the dogs with him.
Yeah, all the dogs are there. What's happening here? He's got wire marks in his hands. Fucking tighten up on that. I mean, if you're going to get someone to strangle your cellmate, that's the guy, too. I mean, he'd fucking do it in 3 seconds. He's so big.
Yeah, you don't want somebody who's got to take their time because they can't exert enough pressure.
You want some Kevin Spacey dude strangling. It's going to take forever.
Hold still.
You want some big gorilla dude.
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, I tell you what, if this new series I'm doing gets picked up for a second season, well, I'm going to recommend to the producers they put the Epstein case on there, even though it's not quite in line with what we do. But still.
Yeah, you sent me a. I'll forward it to Jamie. Did you get it, Jamie? So let's look at the trailer for this. What is it called?
It's called Black Files Declassified.
And what is it basically?
It's on the Science Channel, Discovery's Science Channel. And it's essentially it's a series looking at there's something called the Black Budget, right? And
hey, let's play the trailer.
Let's do that. Let's go to the clip.
And then we'll talk about it. Let's go to the clip, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Black Files Declassified.
Wow. Listen to that.
A top secret aviation program.
They will neither confirm nor deny the existence of records
funded by a mysterious money trail.
There was a lot of thought into how we're going to hide the various pots of money.
Could revolutionize flight.
Do you think that you'll see manned hypersonic flight in your lifetime?
Oh, yeah.
And unleash a new lethal technology.
Extremely high speeds, Mach 5, 6. That would make these cruise missiles almost impossible to defend against.
098 Purple, you have splash. Stand by for PDA.
Every year, more than $90 billion is allocated to clandestine government programs, collectively called the Black Budget. Each individual operation is a black file.
I'm Mike Baker. As a covert CIA operations officer for over a decade and a half,
I supervised missions around the globe. My security clearances gave me access to many classified projects. Now, I'm following the money trail to the secrets hidden inside the Black Files.
Damn. I'd watch that.
I'd watch that.
I'd watch that thing over and over again.
Well, all that kind of shit's fascinating to me.
Well, that's
manned
coming to
hypersonic flight. Does that mean like
that's one of our first episodes? Yeah.
When you say manned hypersonic, like they used to have the Concorde, that was hypersonic, right?
No,
wasn't.
No. Hypersonic is essentially anything over Mach 5 is hypersonic.
So what is
and so we don't have. There's no manned hypersonic flight yet.
So the Concorde was the speed of sound.
Yeah.
And this is faster than the speed of sound.
Yeah, 5 times faster.
Jesus
I mean, you're talking
Christ.
about a mile a second or so. For a missile traveling. So that's what Russia just came out and announced the deployment of a new hypersonic missile or a weapon, and that's where the war in space, or is going, basically, is into hypersonic, mostly unmanned. There's some effort to try to figure out, can we create a manned vehicle? It's really problematic, because you think about traveling that fast, and you think about what that means for punching through the air, and the heat, and the materials that are needed. But as far as unmanned glide vehicles or whatever, I mean, that's where a tremendous amount of resources is being put right now by the Russians, the Chinese, the U.S., and it's pretty frightening, because we don't have any way to defend against it. Like the one fellow mentioned in that clip, is that if you think about a triple sort of a ballistic missile, it's got a trajectory, right? It goes up and it comes down. Just like the Cold War days, we had all the defenses set up, to intercept Russian missiles coming towards us. Well, we knew what the path was going to be, right? And so we were able to deploy a defense system against this. The idea with hypersonic weapons is you have no idea, right? You've got almost no warning, and you'd have no idea what that trajectory is for those weapons. It's going so fast, and it's adjustable. Right, so it's not just depending on, ballistic missile goes up and it's going to come down, and you know exactly what that path is going to look like.
So they can adjust it, like they can slow it down?
You can slow it down. You can change direction.
What?
So yeah. So you think about it. It's a big deal. So I think it may be our first episode is going to be focused on hypersonics, and but there's a variety of other episodes in this thing. But it's all looking at this idea that the black budget exists. It does exist, and there's each project, whether is a project to develop hypersonic flight, in which the U.S. government had that, whether it's Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, whether it's the Space Force, which has been actually around for a long time. There's budgets that account for these programs, and they have to be hidden somewhere. I mean, the government's got to spend the money, right? So the idea being, what started this thing off was the idea that, well, what if you just literally just did follow the money and try to figure out from the money trails how they were developing these projects, and could you identify the various projects that these pots of money go to? And it's turned out to be really it's very interesting. I'm subjective, of course, but it's pretty good, and we don't have a specific air date yet. They're being very mum about it, but it'll be on Sunday nights, coming to a science channel near you soon.
So with these hypersonic missiles, they can, you can't judge from the path that it's gone so far where it's going.
Right,
because
exactly.
they can steer them in real time?
Yeah. The idea being is it's not following a known trajectory. It's not following a ballistic trajectory.
Fuck.
So it is, and it's, it is the development, the effort to try to develop manned hypersonic flight has got a really fascinating history. I mean, and particularly here in the U.S., but we're not there. We're not there yet. That's may not happen in our lifetimes just because of the difficulties. You talk about. I mean, I interviewed some terrific people during the course of that, which is the best part of this series, is being out. From my perspective, you travel around, you see all these interesting things, you talk to these fantastic folks, right? I mean, some incredible people. A former pilot for the old Blackbird program, right? I mean, this guy, strap into this thing and get up to altitude, on the edge of the atmosphere, doing these overflights of Russia, and gathering it, or wherever, and gathering intelligence, and just the dangers involved in these aircraft, these experimental aircraft that were being designed, and the whole goal being eventually trying to work your way towards this hypersonic manned flight. Hey, these people are amazing. Right? And you start talking to some of them, and you realize what people are capable of if they can set aside their fear, and they have that risk appetite.
That's a funny way of putting it. Risk appetite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they just don't think. I mean, a test pilot doesn't think the way that you are. Well, maybe thinks the way you do, but not the way I do. I mean, you talk to some of these folks, but
yeah, I know what you're saying.
But anyway, so yeah, so that's what
the first person who goes up in one of those things, to forget about all the testing and all the structural rigidity documents and all the data and everything that's showing you this is absolutely safe. Like, it's not.
It's not. No, there's nothing safe about it. And like that one fellow that I there was a little bit in the clip where I asked this old guy, looks like somebody's granddad, right? Do you believe there'll be manned hypersonic flight in your lifetime? He says, yes. The story of this guy testing experimental aircraft to try to get to that point, and some of the things that he did, and it's astounding. And you look at him, you think you're not normal. And I talked to his wife, and she said, yeah, it's interesting. She's been married to him forever, but she says, one of the interesting things you learn about being married to somebody like this, a test pilot or somebody else in a position like that, is, they don't process things the same way. They don't necessarily have a lot of empathy because they're just focused on this thing, right? And they're not necessarily thinking, well, I don't want to go up there and die because I'd be leaving my family behind and all. It's not in the thought process. So anyway, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
What do you think about all this stuff about, the New York Times had articles about it. There's Air Force test pilots have come out talking about encountering flying saucers. Mm-hmm. Or unidentified flying objects, particularly Commander Fravor, who had that tic-tac thing. Yeah. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, we do. I'm a shameless marketer. We do an episode on that, on ATIP, on the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. And look, again, I always say the same thing. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I tend to be very cynical about everything, but. After talking to some of these folks, including Fravor and a handful of others who were both pilots and also were involved in the ATIP program for the U.S. government, for the military, there's things out there that we haven't been able to identify, right? And I'm not jumping on the alien train, right? Necessarily, but what I'm saying is that there are things that extremely experienced pilots, military pilots with significant amounts of experience couldn't figure out, couldn't identify, right? And so I'm certainly not going to be smart enough to say, okay, this is what it was. Was it a foreign government's experimental aircraft? Was it something? I don't know. But what I do know is that the U.S. government took it seriously enough that they developed their own internal program within the Pentagon to try to sort out the wheat from the chaff, right? And say, okay, what do we actually have to worry about? In part because it's a national security issue, right? If there is a aircraft or if there's something up there that a military pilot sees, for instance, that they can't identify, all right, well, we have an obligation to figure out what that is, because if it's a hostile foreign government's efforts to develop, craft that we don't know about or propulsion systems we don't know about, then yes, we should be working on that issue. The problem has always been that once you talk about that, then people immediately go, oh, aliens, huh? Area 51, and it kind of gets dismissed. Yeah. But there was a much more serious effort than I knew about before I started working on this thing. And so I don't know. I think I've got an open mind about that. It's like that old thing about how can we really be the only people out here, right? Or life forms out here. I don't know. That seems a little obscure for me to believe.
It seems unrealistic.
Yeah. So, but
when a guy like Fravor, that's the thing. When someone who's that rock solid comes out and tells the story, and he's not deviating from his story. He's not a guy who's trying to make money. He's just, and he doesn't have a history of telling fantastic stories.
And he knew what it meant when he was going to come forward and talk about this. And you've got the gun cameras, and you've got the radar operators who also saw the same thing.
They saw it, and they said it was actively jamming their radar. Yeah. Which they said, what the fuck? And then the way it moved from 60,000 feet down to like 200 feet in like less than a second.
Yeah, and no signs of any propulsion system.
Yeah.
No, there's several things about that leave you scratching your head. Again, I'm not making a case one way or the other. The point of this is to kind of use the money trail as a way to get inside some of these programs, and then to the degree that you can, without to the degree that you can talk about things that are declassified. Not necessarily try to make a case. We're not trying to say it is this or it is that, but I think we're presenting a lot of interesting information that, again, with this situation with Fravor as an example, you come away from it and you think, okay, I'm not dismissing anything at this point. Just it would be I think foolish to or anyway. So interesting stuff. But
was that ever anything that came up during your career?
No, I was pretty much straightforward. Pound the ground through some counterinsurgency operations, counter-narcotics, counterterrorism operations. We never did any counter-alien things. So right, that was a different operation. That was on a floor we weren't allowed to go onto at the headquarters.
Seems like if we had to admit it was real, if it was something that was real, and we were being contacted on a regular basis, or at least a semi-regular basis, That would change the way everybody feels about everything.
Yes.
Remember when Reagan gave that speech? Mm-hmm. Maybe I think it was the United Nations. He said, imagine how easily we would come together if we were faced with a threat from an alien world.
Right.
And everybody was like, oh my God, he knows something. Yeah. The aliens.
He's about to spill the beans.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping.
No,
all the UFO dorks like myself.
Well, but think about it. I mean, think if that did come out, which is what part of the allure, right, is the idea that, the government's been keeping this from us for all these years, and you think about what that would mean, not just obviously, oh my God, really, there's something going on out there, but then sort of that breakdown in trust, not that it's not happening already in terms of the government and its ability to, play square. But, yeah, I mean, look, Area 51. Area 51 was scouted out for use as an experimental, test site for aircraft. And, made perfect sense. Well, then you get all these experimental aircraft being developed out there and flown, some successfully, some not. And, locals, see this shit, locals being a fairly good-sized region because of the distance on these. And, it's understandable how you start getting some of these stories. But, having said that, I sat down with Fravor, right? We talked about this a lot for this one episode, and I talked to several others. And yeah, again, I come away and I'm not sure what to think, but again, I'm not closing the book on anything at this point.
See, the way I looked at it is if these were unique expeditions from another planet, or whatever it is that comes here, some alien spacecraft, all they'd have to do is come here once or twice.
Get fed up.
Well, not even that, but I used to have a bit about it, how Earth is the Tijuana of outer space. They only come down here when they're fucked up and they want to see a show. That's why they don't stay. They just come down and they go, what the fuck? Like, no one's doing any science expeditions to Tijuana.
I'm not going back there. No way. Not unless I'm drunk again.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking that if they were going to come down here and examine us, I mean, they could just do it a couple of times and people have these stories and everybody else dismisses it like, where are they? Where are they? I don't see any aliens.
Yeah.
Because you really wouldn't. And you probably don't. If they're capable of moving at the speed that Fravor described, where it was just impossible to track with the human eye.
They're not going to view us as a threat.
No.
Yeah. They're not
going to. They think we're a threat. I think they're just, I don't know.
They're not going to look at us and say, we want to steal their technology.
It's the most fascinating thing to me. Out of all the weird what ifs and who could do this and how could that be true, the alien one is the most fascinating. Because if that was real, and if we somehow or another one day get some undeniable proof, like the Fravor film, the film footage, the gunner footage, the radar footage, that's pretty goddamn compelling. But man, if there was something off the charts.
Well, and that's the problem always is, and people will point to that and say, even the gun camera footage is, look at this, it's not right. It's hard to follow a little bit. It's not clear necessarily what it is I'm looking at, but it is more compelling than a lot of the other crap that's been out there. Yeah. And so I think it was surprising, but the hypersonics is the. Of all the episodes we did, I think the hypersonics is the one that's really makes you stand up and think this is pretty fucked up. If we get beat to this, you don't want to be in an arms race, but you essentially are. Right?
Who are we in the biggest race with? Is it Russia?
China.
Yeah, because China. I mean,
Russia would say it's theirs. It's them. They're claiming that they've got abilities and. But Putin's always getting out ahead of his skis, and they've got the GDP of a small European country, right? So particularly when oil is down where it is, and so China's got the resources, the motivation. They view themselves as they want to be at the top of the heap.
They also have technological innovation at a very, very, very high level.
Some of it's stolen.
Yeah.
Did I say that? Yeah. I guess
a lot
I did
of
say
it's
that.
stolen.
Yeah, okay, fine. Some of it's stolen. All right. A lot of it.
But still, I mean, they're kind of clever. Like, hey, we didn't figure it out, but it's already been figured out. Let's just steal it and then improve upon it.
Oh, no, they can reverse engineer the shit out of anything, right?
Yeah.
And then they do learn from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's China would be the number one. Look, if you go to Washington, the interesting thing about threats, if you look and say, okay, what are the top threats in the face of the U.S., the top three have never really changed in decades, right? Russia, China, Iran, right? And then what fills out the top two after, or if you go for the top five, critical infrastructure here in the U.S., right? Which is actually probably at the top. I mean, if you say to people in D.C. what worries you the most, they'll say attacks on our critical infrastructure. But Russia, China, Iran, they may switch places occasionally, but they're always up there in that top 5. You know, terrorism ranks somewhere down lower. But it's so China's always going to be an issue. And, you know, they've been very aggressive, both in terms of acquiring information, economic espionage, you know, their military build out, you know, in their desire to kind of take back the Pacific from us. And so, it's our primary competitor. You know? But Russia punches above its weight. And, you know, the narrative about Russia collusion is you know, captured the imagination for 3 years now. And still seems to hold some interest for some Dems in Washington, D.C., no matter what happens. But and then Iran kind of plays that role because of its nuclear pursuits. North Korea is up there to some degree, but kind of bounces in and out of the top. Anyway, for what that's worth. But yeah, if you suddenly we find you know, that Fravors right, or that there's this contact. Oh, well, suddenly, guess what? That's it. That's the top concern at that point.
That's number one.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the hope is always that if we're about to nuke ourselves into another dimension, that the aliens will come down and go, "Hey, dummies!"
Just like a 1950s movie.
Yeah. Like, hey, you fucking idiots! Stop doing that.
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah,
Wasn't that one of them? Yeah.
Yeah. Klaatu Barada Niktu.
Wow.
Remember that?
Look at you.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
Day the Earth Stood Still is a great fucking movie.
It was a great movie.
It's weird. It's like a time capsule, right? Because what they thought it would look like, and the robot. That's just
no, it is. It's I love the movie. I tried to get my boys to sit and watch it not too long ago, and they were like, "Really, Dad? This is what you spend your time watching?" And,
you know what was interesting? I was like a normal thing that the family took the alien in their house.
Yeah.
Come on in, stay with us, strange person from another land.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? He's talking to the kid. Like you're not even a little suspicious. You don't think this guy might be a creep?
What's your favorite movie of sort of alien space genre movie?
Well, I like the best one is Alien, the Sigourney Weaver movie. I think
the first one.
Yeah, that's most likely what alien life is going to be like. Some horrific parasitic fucking creature that eats everything it finds.
Yeah.
That to me seems likely.
Yeah.
That seems more likely.
I remember sitting in the theater when that movie came out, watching it, and when it popped out of that guy's chest, he was, you know, I mean, the entire theater jumped.
Yeah.
Right? It was just crazy. But
people, it's hard because you watch that movie today and you're watching it having seen all the other movies that it's affected and all the other science fiction genre movies and special effects movies, but that movie was special.
Yeah.
In 1979, when that movie came out, that was a special movie. That was a fucking horrifically scary movie, and it was realistic. Like, there was no cut the shit scenes. Everything seemed legitimate. The creature was completely unique.
Weaver was hot.
Hot as fuck.
Yeah.
Woo.
I mean, honestly, we're looking at pictures of Liz Hurley. We should be looking at Sigourney Weaver.
And that's a great movie where a woman is the hero, and you're not flinching. There's no part where you're going, what is she doing? She's kicking everybody's ass. Get the fuck out of here. That's a movie where like that's a real hero.
Yeah.
That's a real hero who rises to the occasion in this horrific situation where this ship has been overtaken by an alien. I think that there's things out there. I don't know if I believe. I want to believe that we've been visited, but I don't know if I believe.
I think there's things out there. Yeah, I'm on board with what the second part of that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe it would be such a secret, but you know, and also knowing the U.S. government. Look, I mean, you know, it's harder to find out from the network when they're going to start this show than it is getting secrets out of Washington, D.C., right? So I'm thinking, we would have known for now if it had happened, but I do believe there's other shit out there, right? I can't believe we're it.
No, I don't think we're it. But
maybe we're being hopeful. I can't believe we're it. I mean, but you know.
But I'm also fascinated to think that if they did know that that something was here, that they would visit it occasionally. You know, drop in on it occasionally for a scientific expedition, just see what the fuck we're up to.
Yeah, unless they just got so disgusted the last time they just thought, that's it, I'm done.
I don't think so. We don't get disgusted. We don't get disgusted when we go visit baboons. When we study baboons, scientists return. Robert Sapolsky, he spent many years going back and forth to Africa studying baboons. And baboons are boring as fuck compared to people. if you weren't a person, if you were from some enlightened race, a million years advanced from us, you would be so fascinated to come by and look at people.
Yeah, although they probably look at us like we're a bunch of shit-flinging monkeys, so I think you're probably right. Yeah.
I mean, if we had a time machine, tell me it wouldn't be amazing if there was a time machine, but it could only go back 500,000 years ago to the beginning of man. Like the early, whatever ancient hominid that was alive back then. God damn, that would be fascinating to be a fly on the wall and watch these primitive humanoids try to figure out fire and try to figure out hunting and become what we are today.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there would probably be moments, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to sit and watch the whole thing because I think that would be, boring as shit. I mean, come on, just get on with it. Chip that rock into a circle, do something with it. Come on, but I think that you're right. I mean, if there's higher life forms out there, and you'd have to assume they are higher life forms if they're traveling, these distances. And again, looking at the issues of propulsion systems for hypersonic flight, et cetera. Would they look at this bunch of folks down here and think, just not interested? I don't know.
I think at a certain point in time, it would be unnecessary to physically visit. I feel like maybe
they're watching us through the Samsung TVs.
Yeah.
See, it all comes. That's the thing about it. It all comes back around full circle.
Yeah, you got to put a tape over that camera.
You do.
I think there's probably you do, right? How much?
You should. I mean, if people should check their. This is again, smart TVs. If you've got one that's of recent vintage, check and you'll see there's a little hole along the frame. That's the camera. And there's a microphone set up on an audio system. Yeah, just put a piece of tape over. That's your your low cost solution, right? You can go in there and adjust and turn it off, but you try figuring that out, right? That's like trying to program your VCR, right? Trying to figure out how to get into your TV, into the settings to change the smart interactivity, and then do you also want to trust that that's what's going to happen if you turn it off? So just put a piece of duct tape over it.
They've showed that with Facebook, that even if you turn off location, they're still tracking you.
Yeah. That's why I say, I again, going back to that same old thing, which is like, the government's trying to screw us over, they're spying on us. You know what? Unless you're involved in criminal activity or terrorism, they honestly don't have any interest, but they also don't have the resources and the time available. Commercial side of things, though, is different because it drives what they're all about, which is making money.
Especially when you sign those terms of agreements, the terms of use agreements. Like most people just accept it. You don't look through it.
Right. Well, there's a regulation. There's a piece of legislation or whatever that outlaws, secretly videoing. I forget what it was. It was years and years ago. It was decades ago. But you give up that right by clicking on agree on those user agreements.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody who's ever read a user agreement.
What is this, Jamie?
New law passed in California this year.
Consumer Privacy Act allows anyone who resides in a state to access and obtain copies of the data that companies store on them and the right to delete that data and opt out of companies selling or monetizing their data.
California leading the way again.
It's only for residents in California, though.
That's
if you live somewhere else, you can check, but you can't have
it. I'm moving from Idaho to California. Just
there's
for
some
this.
good spots in California. This isn't one of them.
Yeah.
It's a good spot. Just too many people found out about it. My worry is more of social media companies now than anything. Even in a lot of ways more than the government spying on us. I worry about the power that something like Facebook has, the insane amount of influence that they have on people, and how through the use of their algorithms they actually instigate arguments and try to get people, because that's how people respond, and that's what makes people want to click on things, and that's what generates revenue. So their algorithms encourage, and it's the idea is that they encourage outrage, but they don't really. But people like outrage, so they encourage you to go seek out. Like Ari Shaffir did an experiment where he used YouTube and he only searched for puppies. That's all he searched for, just puppies on YouTube, and that's all YouTube would recognize. So all they were recommending to him was puppies. And he's like, oh, okay. So it's really not nefarious. Yeah. It's based entirely on what your needs are or what your interests are. But so many people are interested in things that outrage them that it becomes a very profitable thing for them when their algorithm shows these people what they want. But the problem is the people itself. It's not necessarily the algorithm. It's not like the algorithm is some nefarious algorithm is designed to instigate strife.
No, it's taking advantage of human nature to some degree, but it's also, I mean, you've raised a really important point, because coming up on this election, people are talking about, oh my God, they're going to hack in, they're going to influence the vote. Now, part of the danger is in the social engineering, right? And the way, and it's very clever. So, if you look at like something that just happened, this actually is really interesting, and it's still being investigated. But a report came out from a group, Area 1, which is sort of looking at hackers and looking at cybersecurity issues, and it's not a particularly well-known group. It's not like Kaspersky or some of these others that are out there. But they just came out with a report a couple days ago, basically saying that the Russians, a Russian entity, likely the former GRU, the military intelligence group of the Russian intelligence service, hacked into Burisma. Now, Burisma is that company in the Ukraine that Hunter Biden was sat on the board of, right? And now you think, oh, Russians hacked into it. And so what happens? Almost immediately when this report comes out saying a Russian intel operation hacked into Burisma recently, as it was sort of becoming an issue and Trump was banging on about it, and Hunter Biden, and there was talk about holding up Ukrainian aid if you don't investigate the Biden situation. So you'd look at this, and if you just looked at it on a very simple level, you go, wow. And I've already seen some of that narrative saying, well, look, the Russians are working on behalf of Trump again. See? That's what they're doing. They're working on behalf of Trump. They're hacking into Burisma, and that's, what he was complaining about. If you step back and you think about what are the Russians trying to do, right, with all of their hacking efforts, all their social media engineering, they're trying to create dissent. So now what have you got? Now you're ramping up this story again. Now, to what degree Area 1's story or report is correct? I mean, there's some discussion as to whether it's accurate or not. But to that degree that you have to look at everything now with a very skeptical eye, and you have to say, okay, what is the purpose of it? Why is this a timed leak of information? Right? Did they intend to? In other words, did the Russian intel service? They don't do anything haphazardly, right? Did they do this with the idea that we're going to leak this out now? Because now it looks like we're still, we're pushing this whole thing. We're trying to help Trump. We're going to get that narrative going again, right? Because now we're getting into an election cycle. It's interesting stuff. It's like after Soleimani was smoked, almost immediately after, social media posts, sort of very subtly, but pro-Iranian regime, Soleimani, again, very subtle, but in that vein, they spiked. Over the course of the next 48 hours, massive numbers compared to what had been in the past of sympathetic enough to turn people's thoughts, right? To get that narrative going of like, well, oh my God, they assassinated a foreign leader, right? That's all they're looking to do is create that. And the Iranian cybersecurity force is increasingly sophisticated. 10 years ago, they probably wouldn't have been able to orchestrate sort of that sort of social media work. I guess my point being is that we look at things very simplistically, right? Because we tend to look at it through this political spectrum, saying I'm right, I'm left, whatever. But you have to step back and think, what are they doing? What's the purpose of this? And maybe it's more complex or layered than just simply accepting what it is that's being said, which happens. That's the danger of social media. Is everyone takes at face value shit that they see on Twitter or whatever, and rather than stepping back and going, I wonder if this story is even accurate. But somebody will post some bullshit. Half the time, it's whether it's for the left or right doesn't matter, or whether it's from a foreign entity, the state-sponsored effort. You take it and you run with it. Next thing you know, it's got 10,000 likes and people are talking about it like it's correct.
Yeah, that's a real problem with today's social media, is that these agencies, like the Internet Research Agency in Russia did before the 2016 election, they really can stir up dissent with these thousands and thousands of social media accounts that they have, and they can get people thinking in a certain way. They can get people to argue things in a certain way, and you hear those talking points that these bots and these companies that are designed just to stir people up. You see those talking points repeated, so it is effective.
Oh no, absolutely. And look, the Russians have been doing this. years and years ago, decades ago, they were buying off journalists to write favorable articles or articles that they wanted to get the narrative out there for, right? So they would pay off journalists, whether it was overseas or here, wherever it may be, and that was old school, right? But the point of it, right, the reasoning behind it is still the same, right? You're trying to affect the narrative. You're trying to affect a certain opinion. Or you're trying to foment dissent. You're trying to create some chaos. And you're right. Here, now with a lot of the social media that foreign entities are doing, they're trying to take advantage and trying to drive wedges in. So you get these things that try to drive and create more of a racial divide, as an example. Whatever it is that they can do. And sometimes they're doing it just simply to create the chaos. Sometimes they're doing it for a more specific, focused reason. But we're not sophisticated. I mean, I think we're more aware of it now because it's been in the news and we've been talking about it to some degree. But as a population, we're not very sophisticated, and so they're still going to take advantage of it. And it's not just the Russians; it's any nation that's got the resource or the ability and somewhat motivation and sees it in their own best interest. They're going to be engaged in this. So I have a cyber unit that's doing this sort of thing. So. I don't know where it's going to go, but you worry about sort of the impact that it has. It's not the idea that they're going in there to voting machines and switching up data. I mean, frankly, we should be going to a paper-based system. I would, if I was in charge, I would say that's it. No more paperless voting systems. Get that shit out of here. We're not going to rely on the internet. You know what they're doing in Iowa for the caucuses? It's all going to be internet-based voting, reporting for the caucuses in Iowa. Right.
Interesting.
You think, I mean, but again, you think that, whether it's independent hackers or state-sponsored from China or Russia, wherever. Of course, they're targeting this, and they're putting a great deal of resource into it, and they've already probably mapped out the infrastructure. So, hey, get back to the old days. If you're targeting a terrorist organization, and you start having success picking up comms and communications and gathering signals intelligence on them, first thing they do is throw their phones away and go back to the old system of, look, I'm going to handwrite some message. I'm going to hand it to my cousin. He's going to hand it to his cousin, and that's all. That's our communication system from now on. So we should dumb down and go back to the old days and just do a paper system, which takes longer and is a pain in the ass, but
you can't hack it.
Can't hack it. Yeah. Anyway, that's just me.
Well, listen, Mike.
I went back to my Bernie Sanders voice there.
It's always great having you in here, man. Tell people again when your show. Well, you don't have an air date.
I don't know. They're keeping it mum.
All right. Well, when you tell me, we'll tell everybody.
That sounds
let
good,
everybody
man.
know. They can get a hold of you on Twitter and Instagram at
MB Company Man is the Twitter thing. And thank you. I'm always amazed at how fast the time goes.
Time
I'm
flies,
sure
bro.
you're not, but
I am.
I'm amazed.
I am still amazed.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Get out to Boise, right?
Okay.
Everybody's waiting.
I'll do it.
All right, man.
All right. Talk
Take
to you.
care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
man.
Bye, everybody.